The nightclub throbbed with deep bass and pricey drinks, a perfect scene for anyone chasing status. In the VIP area, Mr. Yang ruled the space, flaunting a bottle of whiskey while keeping a woman close at his side. He taunted her, asking if she still held a grudge over him beating up her boyfriend. The young woman's reaction was cold. Showing no loyalty, she dismissed her ex, calling him nothing more than a pastime, not even close to Yang's level of influence. The comment drew laughs and praise from the brute, who bragged about funding her luxury and designer bags. The situation quickly turned into public harassment, leaving the companion uncomfortable in front of everyone. When she asked him to stop, all she got were insults aimed at her ex. Yang mocked how Han Hao had been weak and never dared to touch her, while now he had complete control over her body and will. But the atmosphere of flaunting wealth was shattered by a sudden bloodbath across the club. A avenger appeared amid the chaos, charging at Yang Hua with palpable hatred. The intruder had been watching the villain, disgusted by his terrible behavior toward women at the club, and now he exploded in rage. He called Yang an animal and declared it was over for him. The final showdown was set. The hero wouldn't leave without making Yang pay for every humiliation. The setting was the Grand Night Rose Fragrance Hotel, a 5-star luxury where the story had been building 2 hours before the chaos. The protagonist, Han Hao, was in his senior year in Qingshui City, but carried the weight of failure. A mistake in his past had gotten him kicked out of an elite university, wrecking his career plans. The only thing keeping him motivated was Zheng Jiajia. By a stroke of luck, the girl of his dreams ended up at the same college. Han Hao saw it as a chance for the perfect romance and spared no effort to impress her. He became her personal luxury servant. He did all her schoolwork and religiously delivered breakfast to the women's dorm door. His efforts paid off, and the goddess finally agreed to go out with him. During their outing, things seemed to go well until Han Hao tried a small gesture of affection. When he reached for her hand, hoping to feel her skin, she pulled away sharply. With a look of disapproval, she told him to keep his composure and not be so forward. The cold rejection hit him hard, leaving him feeling like a complete stranger next to the woman he idolized. Determined to buy a luxury gift for his girlfriend's birthday, he worked multiple part-time jobs to afford the designer bag. But during a cleaning shift, Han Hao's world collapsed. Walking down a hallway, sounds of a private party and intimate noises froze him in place. Through a crack in the door, the scene was shocking. A young woman clinging to a much older man. Squinting to see clearly, the blow was brutal. It was Zheng Jiajia, the same girl who had acted so pure and rejected him, now given over to that stranger. Blinded by rage, Han Hao kicked the door open and demanded answers. The girl, caught off guard, barely reacted. Without thinking, he grabbed her wrist to pull her away, but violence was the response. A precise kick to his stomach sent him flying. The impact against the wall knocked the wind out of him. Before he could recover from the pain, Han Hao was thrown to the floor, a heavy foot crushing his face into the ground. Yang Hua, the aggressor, mocked him while pressing him under his boot. Even suffocated and with his head throbbing, Han Hao shouted that he was Jiajia's boyfriend and he'd take her away, still hoping she was being held against her will. The leopard print-shirted man laughed and turned to the girl, asking if that loser was really her boyfriend. Without hesitation, she adjusted her hair and declared her total loyalty to Mr. Yang. Hearing that hurt more than the weight on his face. Seeing the woman he idolized accept that villain's touch shattered him. As tears fell, shock turned into cold hatred. Right then, he vowed revenge would come double. It was already past midnight when he finally got out. Dragging himself home, face swollen and soul in pieces, it felt like the universe was against him. Someone dumped water from a balcony, hitting him full on, followed by curses from an annoyed resident. Along the way, a suspicious-looking old man approached. Claiming to be a luck master, he promised to cleanse all Han Hao's negative karma for 100 won. Even knowing it sounded like a scam, Han Hao felt sorry and offered his only 10 yuan. The old man accepted, took a sip from a strange vial, and with a sinister smile pressed a vital point on Han Hao's neck. The jolt was violent. Han Hao felt like lightning had shot through his spine. The effect was immediate and impossible. His wounds healed in seconds, and an unknown power began coursing through his veins. The game was about to change. When he tried demanding explanations, the old man just walked away, dancing and mumbling nonsense through the streets. Then an impossible sight appeared. The night was filled with glowing blue screens floating in front of him. He had no idea what the immortal system was or what the host fusion messages meant. A mental progress bar began loading. In the blink of an eye, the numbers jumped from 50% to complete. A notification blazed. Symbiosis complete. Han Hao was in shock, unsure if he was losing it or if this was real. Confusion deepened when an irritated voice echoed in his mind. It was a strange creature, animal-like, complaining about being linked to a stupid mortal. The being was furious it landed with the wrong master, but made it clear there was no going back. They were one. Frightened at the idea of a living creature inside him, Han Hao ordered it gone. The response was a cold taunt. Separating now would mean instant death. Seeing Han Hao's terrified face, the system laughed, mocking how easily he believed any threat. Defeated, Han Hao tried dismissing the creature, insisting he just wanted peace. The system, angry at his disregard for a power others would kill to obtain, decided to give him a reality check. Without warning, a surreal, magical gust blasted him into the sky like a rag doll. From above, thrown side to side, Han Hao saw the intimate lives of neighbors, witnessing betrayals and dramas through windows. Rage from earlier boiled in his chest, and instinctively, he channeled it into raw energy. A lightning bolt cut across the sky, aimed at a cheating lover's room, leaving the man terrified. The thunderous strike was colossal. No one was gravely hurt, but secrets were exposed, proving the impossible had happened. Back on the ground and still shaking, Han Hao felt like he was in a sci-fi movie, struggling to accept that these manhwa-level powers were now real. The system mocked his confusion, explaining it was just a free sample. To unlock true unlimited power, he would need to commit to the path of evolution. Asked about his greatest desire, Han Hao's answer was instant and full of hatred. He wanted to crush his ex-girlfriend and the man who humiliated him. The system sighed in disappointment, expecting divine ambition but getting only a scream for revenge. Even disappointed with his small ambition, the system formalized the pact. The first official mission appeared. The goal was simple and brutal: defeat Yang Hua and make him beg for forgiveness on his knees. As a helper, a bizarre item unlocked: a pair of pink bunny ears. The hero hesitated, feeling humiliated, but the system promised that the ridiculous accessory would multiply his strength and agility to superhuman levels. Remembering every kick and insult he endured at the hotel, Han Hao swallowed his pride. He wasn't the helpless student he once was. Now he carried a promise of destruction. The showdown happened in the same place, under the skeptical eyes of the henchmen. Yang Hua, overflowing with arrogance, asked if the kid had come back to crawl and apologize. Han Hao's reply was a command so sharp, it stunned the villain for a moment before he burst out laughing. The mocking intensified as Yang Hua's guards closed in on him. Yang taunted, claiming no one could touch him and that Han Hao would be crushed before even getting close. Then, the young man asked for a moment and, hand shaking, pulled the pink bunny ears from his pocket. With ritual-like seriousness, he placed them on his head like a war crown, creating an absurdly comical scene in front of his enemies. Yang Hua almost lost his breath laughing, commenting that while it was creative, guys in costumes weren't his type. Han Hao's embarrassment was obvious, but he stayed still, ignoring the joke. Behind the ridiculous look, he felt the system's power coursing through him. He knew in seconds the smirk on Yang's face would turn to pure terror. The scene was surreal. Across the club, eyes filled with contempt labeled Han Hao as crazy and perverted. Laughter and insults echoed, all focused on the ridiculous pink ears. No one there had any idea that this accessory was the trigger for a devastating force about to erupt. Ignoring the insults, Han Hao moved. He became a blur. Yang Hua's guards, who had been mocking him, panicked as they realized he was moving at superhuman speed. They tried to grab him, but Han Hao dodged with impossible precision as if he could see the future. Retaliation came in harsh, brutal blows. In seconds, the henchmen were down, and the hero's fists were stained with blood. Fear finally overtook Yang Hua's face. Watching his army fall, the villain tasted the bitter consequences. Trembling, he tried to understand how that loser had turned into a combat monster. But the answer came as a punch straight to his nose. The impact was so violent his skull whipped against the wall, cracking the concrete. With the item's effect nearing its end, Han Hao wasted no time. He grabbed the enemy by the collar, asking if he still believed money made him untouchable or the master of others' wills. Without giving him a chance to answer, he unleashed the rest of his fury. When the bunny ears effect finally faded, all that was left of Yang Hua was a disfigured, unrecognizable mess, a testament that the city's power hierarchy had just been destroyed. Freed from the ridiculous accessory, Han Hao delivered the final humiliation. He demanded the aggressor kneel and call him daddy, warning that the massacre would continue if he disobeyed. Broken and shaking, the villain immediately complied, begging for his life and offering his entire fortune for mercy. Han Hao didn't hesitate. he took the man's wallet, declaring the money would serve as moral compensation for the psychological damage inflicted. Asking for the card's PIN revealed Yang Hua's ultimate arrogance. He didn't even have one. Han Hao's disgust grew as he realized this man saw himself as a god above the law. Nearby, Zheng Jiajia watched in terror. The hero, however, spared no energy on revenge toward her. He looked at her with total indifference, as if she were nothing but dust, and simply turned his back, leaving the place. At that moment, the system interface glowed blue, confirming mission success. But while Han Hao waited for his reward, eyes followed him from the shadows. The club's bartender, acting as an informant, was already on the phone reporting every detail to a mysterious superior. In a dim office, the boss received the news in shock. A simple kid had taken control of the object. Interested, but cautious, he ordered full surveillance on the new player who dared challenge his dominance. The hunt for the system's host had just begun. The blue interface blinked with victory notifications. The system congratulated Han Hao on completing the mission, granting 15 experience points and a beginner's pack. Checking his mental inventory, the young man found techniques with imposing names, promising to turn him into a legend. Noticing his confusion, the AI decided to give a quick lesson on power hierarchy. The hidden world of immortals was divided into complex layers: soul awareness, spirit activation, and soul development. Each level had substages separating novices from masters. As a newcomer, Han Hao occupied the lowest rung of the superhuman scale. Curious, he asked if others also had systems, but the answer was clear. He was the only one with this technological and divine advantage. Meanwhile, the surveillance in the shadows continued. The agent sent by the boss found the target's erratic behavior suspicious, but dared not question orders. If the master wanted this kid watched, there had to be a powerful reason. The next morning, the atmosphere changed. In the quiet of his room, Han Hao stared at Yang Hua's wallet, still processing the turnaround. Inside was a small fortune, over 30,000 in cash, and a mysterious sealed white pill in a hidden compartment. The moment was interrupted by knocks on the door and Mo Jai's familiar voice. Opening it, he faced his classmate and friend, radiating joy. But her smile quickly turned into a pout of indignation. Mo Jai reminded him sharply that it was his birthday, and he had promised a special lunch. Caught off guard, the hero improvised quickly, assuring her that he had planned everything down to the smallest detail and that she would have a luxurious day. Her satisfaction was immediate, moving closer to him with a warmth that left him off balance. Moji's excitement peaked when they stopped in front of the fanciest, most expensive restaurant in Qingshui. For someone who had been a humble student just yesterday, the display of wealth was the first step into his new life of power. Moji hesitated at the entrance, reminding him that he was saving every penny for Jiajia's gift. Han Hao's answer was curt and final. The relationship was over. He said he now preferred spending his money on someone who truly mattered, his childhood best friend. The news didn't bring Moji down. If anything, a mix of satisfaction and shyness lit up her eyes. At the table, Han Hao was lost amid the sophisticated menu, unfamiliar with any of the dishes. Moji took charge, placing multiple orders, but the relaxed mood didn't last long. On her way to the restroom, she accidentally bumped into a man, spilling a glass of red wine onto his suit. The man, clearly drunk, erupted in insults. Mojai, mortified, tried to apologize, but he barely heard her, shouting about the outrageous cost of his clothing. Suddenly, his tone turned sinister. Noticing her beauty, he closed in, demanding she come closer to make up for the accident. Han Hao stepped in, grabbing the drunk man's arm and insisting they would cover the dry cleaning, but only if he let her go. The scoundrel let out a mocking laugh, ridiculing Han Hao's plain appearance and asking if he had 100,000 yuan in his pocket to play the night. The villain's contempt escalated when he suggested that since Han Hao looked broke, he could take the girl as payment. Han Hao stayed calm, a sarcastic smile tugging at his lips. He pulled out a 20 yuan note, holding it up to the man and saying it was more than enough to clean those old rags. The public humiliation enraged Mr. Shenhui. He grabbed Mojai's arm violently, pulling her close, growling that no one would shame him like that. Han Hao felt his blood boil and issued an ultimatum: let her go now, or things were going to get ugly. In response, Shenhui's goons rose from the surrounding tables, closing in on him. The villain sneered at his men, promising that whoever took the boy down first would win the girl for the night. The henchmen didn't hesitate. Eyes burning with bloodlust, they swore total obedience. Han Hao, a mocking grin spreading across his face, felt power bubbling inside him. The plan was simple: use his new abilities to crush the opposition and watch the enemy crawl. His confidence in the system was total, and his call for help was immediate. The response was instant and cruel. The system announced the activation of a secret mission with a bizarre restriction. For 3 hours, any form of attack or offensive skill was strictly prohibited. The shock hit him physically. His plan for a lightning-fast victory crumbled, replaced by icy fear. With no strategy and no defense, Han Hao could only hold Moji tightly as the villain, anticipating a bloodbath, commanded his men to advance. The desperation grew with the weight of the punishment. Failure would cost him any trace of female appeal forever, a fate worse than death. Yet, amid the mental chaos, an unexpected tool appeared: Father's Steel Love. The item promised to multiply the user's strength by 100 times for 3 minutes. The confusion was total. What use was immense brute strength if he couldn't throw a single punch? The enemy horde was already on him, fueled by war cries demanding the boy be reduced to dust. It was at that edge, between falling and surviving, that the system's logic clicked in Han Hao's mind. A sinister smile spread across his face as he realized how to use that overwhelming strength for something other than a direct strike. Spotting the leader coordinating the attack from the shadows, he didn't back down. He issued a direct challenge, a personal reckoning. The audacity sparked immediate outrage among the subordinates, who couldn't believe a kid would dare challenge the legend of Master Zhang. The white-haired man was a ghost on the battlefield. His speed made him invisible to ordinary eyes. Before any defense could form, opponents were flying through the air, knocked out by a danger they couldn't even track. The hero watched in shock, mesmerized by the flawless technique. Where had a man with such overwhelming power come from? The strangest part was seeing the veteran mercilessly massacre his own allies. If he treated his own this way, the fate of a stranger would be total annihilation. With a heavy step, the white-haired man faced his subordinates and roared, demanding to know who had the authority to make decisions in his name. The kidnapper of Moji, smirking, revealed the executioner's identity: Master Zhang, a legend of the special forces, capable of decapitating a lion with his bare hands. Realizing the gulf of power, the girl screamed desperately for her friend to retreat. The old man then challenged the boy to a direct duel, mocking that no one in Qingshui could survive a single punch from him. Han Hao's reply was lethal sarcasm. He laughed and extended 20 silver coins to the old man, suggesting he take a taxi to experience the real world outside his bubble. The goal was clear: destabilize the opponent. There was no turning back. The fight was inevitable. Zhang's fury exploded in a lightning-fast charge. The speed was unreal. Han Hao saw the fist hurtling toward him like a projectile and knew he couldn't dodge. He gritted his teeth, closed his eyes, and braced for the bone-shattering impact, but the pain never came. The instant the punch landed, a violent wave of energy rippled outward. Master Zhang's arm erupted in bloody wounds, as if it had struck an invisible wall of thorns. The veteran stumbled back, screaming, blood gushing, utterly shocked by the passive counterattack. Seeing the master defeated without the boy lifting a finger, the kidnapper felt his stomach twist in sheer terror. Han Hao, finally exhaling the breath he didn't realize he'd been holding, declared his victory. Even he hadn't imagined his body could withstand such an impact, but the truth was clear. Reaching the superhuman level turned his physical resilience into a weapon all on its own. He now caused destruction just by existing. The realization hit Han Hao hard. His best defense was literally passive brute strength. Seeing Master Zhang in tatters, Moji's kidnapper completely panicked and released her, trembling with fear. With an icy stare, Han Hao fixed him with a gaze and asked if he too was lining up to get destroyed. The coward immediately backed off, stammering ridiculous apologies and pretending it was all a misunderstanding. But Han Hao hadn't forgotten the insults to his friend or the death threats. The air was heavy. The fear in the man's eyes was obvious. All that gangster swagger had evaporated. The tension broke only when the owner of the place, Li Jiang, intervened. He delivered a direct message. The head of the family demanded the boy come upstairs. Since the 100-fold strength bonus had just expired and he was still barred from attacking, Han Hao tried to stall. He said he was busy and would come another day, hoping to escape unharmed. It didn't work. With a snap of fingers, armed guards surrounded every exit, turning the place into a cage. As he tried to push past them, a shadow appeared behind him. The voice was calm but intimidating. "Your technique's good, kid, but it's nothing compared to Master Li." The old man smiled, warning that no one in Qingshui had the audacity to snub old Li and live to tell the tale. With no way out and cursing his own arrogance, the hero had no choice but to follow the elder. He regretted speaking so freely. If he'd known the secret mission still left him defenseless for another 2 hours, he would have kept his mouth shut. The announcement echoed through the hall. The guest of honor had arrived. The atmosphere grew heavy. Han Hao was blocked at the door, given the humiliating order to wait while the master finished his amusement. The door slammed in his face, bruising his ego and sharpening his attention. He caught fragments of a strange conversation about the pursuit of immortality and some X-ray vision amulet. Curious, he activated his own ocular powers to peek through the walls. The system delivered the intel. The old man was Li Tang Hao, an elite superhuman on permanent high alert. His level was absurdly higher than Han Hao's. Any confrontation here would be suicide. One wrong move and he'd be history. As he watched the match unfold, Han Hao desperately tried to formulate a plan. On the board, Mr. Li was facing his granddaughter, who was fuming. She complained that her grandfather had promised to make the game easier, but he mercilessly crushed her again. Laughing, the old man delivered a sharp lesson. She had lost because she expected him to go easy. To him, this betrayal on the board was a way of teaching the girl how the world really worked. Noticing the elder repeatedly turning his glass, Han Hao made a bold comment, asking if the old man's body could really handle that much alcohol or if he was just tired of living. The room froze. Xiao Shuang, the granddaughter, shot him a deadly glare. She leapt from her chair, furious, demanding to know who dared insult her grandfather like that. The patriarch rose, exuding authority, and ordered her to calm down and sit. Han Hao felt sweat drip cold down his back. He knew he had to keep his cool or this hall would become his grave. Mr. Li moved forward like a predator, every step making the air feel heavier. He fixed Han Hao with a piercing gaze that felt like it was cutting through his soul. The aura was an ocean of pressure. Han Hao felt his body lock completely, limbs numb and useless. It was as if gravity had doubled just on him. Even smiling, the master demanded the boy repeat his previous insolence. Trapped and humiliated by his own paralysis, Han Hao desperately searched the system for a way out. He decided to risk it all and activate his X-ray vision, hoping to gain an edge. What he saw was a nightmare. Instead of fantasies, his eyes pierced flesh to reveal cold, detailed skeletons. The disgust was immediate, but the real problem was his petrified body. He had to take control before being crushed. Clenching his teeth, he repeated the warning. The old man needed to stop drinking, but he went further, saying the alcohol was just a crutch to avoid superhuman-level transitions. The effect was immediate. Mr. Li froze, surprised, and the suffocating pressure lifted. The old man demanded to know how a kid had discovered his deepest secret. Catching his breath, Han Hao realized the X-ray hadn't been a total failure. Through the bones, he saw internal scars and damage to the master's chest. Whenever the climate shifted, it tortured him, blocking his path to spiritual ascension. This was the missing piece. The master stood dumbfounded, processing the revelation. Furious and intrigued, he demanded to know where this boy came from and how he had access to such intimate data. Smirking, Han Hao played his final card. He claimed they were after the same goal, immortality. And in the world of the strong, certain intentions need no explanation. Han Hao's words hit Xiao Shuang like an insult. To her, this kid was just a charlatan playing games. Her instinct was to punish his audacity with a slap, believing a good beating would teach him the respect he lacked. Feeling the trap closing in, the hero played his final card. He knew exactly how to cure the old man's illness. The effect was immediate. Xiao Shuang froze, and Master Li shifted his stance, demanding proof of Han Hao's claim. Clearing his throat, Han Hao set the stage for a bombshell revelation. In truth, it was just a plan to buy time. Behind the confident facade, he was begging the system for a solution. The price came, 15 immortality points. Without hesitation, the boy sealed the deal. His life was worth far more than a few points. The system delivered the answer. The cure was complicated but possible with a rare healing orb. Han Hao explained gravely to the room that the disease was terrible, but he possessed the path to salvation through this mystical artifact. Xiao Shuang, now hopeful, asked where to find it. His reply was direct. Only he had the means, and it would take 3 days to retrieve. The old man chuckled in disbelief but accepted the agreement. If it was true, the favor would be immense. With a friendly tap on the young man's shoulder, the patriarch sealed a new alliance and invited him to follow. When asked about the destination, Li revealed he intended to repay the favor, but his gratitude had a very specific target, the scumbag who dared lay a hand on Moji. Entering the office, the air of humiliation was thick. The patriarch pointed to the chair at the front, but the order wasn't for Han Hao. A third man in the room was about to feel the full weight of the Li family's wrath. Han Hao didn't waste a second. Spotting the invite for himself, he strode forward with arrogance and collapsed into the luxurious chair beside the patriarch. It was a nightmare for the henchman who had once threatened him. The man froze, sweating. The owner, radiating sharp disdain, ordered the subordinate out. His mediocre presence was not fit for the expensive furniture. The verdict hit like a hammer. Lee announced that Han Hao's debts were cleared, and the price of peace was the immediate transfer of the henchman's village into the boy's hands. The man's knees went weak. He tried to protest, but the patriarch's icy stare cut off any rebellion. It was surrender or face absolute punishment. With no choice, the former owner swallowed his loss. Leaving the room, Han Hao twirled the keys to his new luxurious mansion in his fingers. Mo Jie, incredulous at the cinematic twist, heard him promise she could inspect the palace with her own eyes that very night. After Han Hao departed, Xiao Shuang asked her grandfather if they might have been tricked by a con artist. The old man didn't seem worried. In Qingshui, no one escaped the Li family's reach for long. Meanwhile, ascending his apartment stairs, the hero was bombarded by notifications. Secret mission completed successfully. 10 immortality points hit his account, exactly enough to acquire the healing orb and close that chapter. But physical exhaustion weighed him down. He decided the world could wait until morning. A bath and deep sleep were priorities. Yet fate had other plans. Opening his bedroom door, the shock erased all traces of sleep. The room looked like a hurricane had passed. Destroyed furniture, ripped clothes, scattered belongings. Someone had ransacked every inch in search of something valuable. Before he could process it, his phone rang. It was Mo Ji, screaming in panic. Her home had been broken into and looted too. Han Hao's blood boiled. This wasn't coincidence. The system stayed silent on the culprit, but the pattern was clear. Someone was hunting the children, and the trap was tightening fast. The frantic sprint to Moji's apartment was fueled by one thought. The enemy wasn't a common thief, but someone after secrets of immortality. The danger was a shadow that could strike back any second. By dawn, reality had shifted dramatically. The scene was now a cinematic mansion in the elite Guangcui district, a place so luxurious it seemed unreal. The hero woke to an angelic sight, Mo Ji softly calling him for breakfast. Between yawns, it slowly sank in. This wasn't a dream. The joint attack the night before forced an immediate move to the new villa. The sudden cohabitation left the girl flustered, feeling the pace was too fast. With a confident smile, he cut through the tension. The territory was his, the rules were his, and her safety was absolute, since the reason for the failed robbery was still a dangerous mystery. As she looked at him with curiosity and shyness, the topic shifted to the next day, a reunion with old classmates. Han Hao wrinkled his nose, uninterested in socializing, but Mo Jai, who had been a monitor and saw the event as a golden opportunity, persuaded him. The final argument was strategic and protective. "We can't separate now." To her, the line sounded like a romantic vow, seeing how this once ordinary boy had grown into a man of action. The reunion took place at the Color Karaoke, a lively place bursting with lights, food, and colorful drinks. But while the group got lost in music and excitement, Han Hao sat in a corner, out of place and impatient. Boredom turned to irritation when the conversation veered to his ex-girlfriend's betrayal. Rumors were flying, and the teasing was sharp. Some girls gossiping tried to shift the blame, suggesting maybe he wasn't the ideal boyfriend. One, hiding her face behind a glass, recalled being rejected by him in school, holding on to that grudge all these years. Amid the hostile chatter, a drunken classmate lifted a bottle, boldly offering to help the girl get back at Han Hao. The stage for a confrontation was being set, amid laughter and clinking glasses. Han Hao's silence was dangerous, a calm nobody could read. Unlike masters who hide their power strategically, he just didn't see the point in wasting energy on small-minded people. But peace never lasts. One of the guys broke the ice with a sharp taunt, asking why the protagonist was sitting there alone, like a loser. The humiliation escalated when a bizarre phone call rang. A stranger called the company, laughing mockingly, suggesting Han Hao give lectures on how to be the biggest cuck in the city. The goal was obvious: humiliate him publicly and warn others. Tension spiked as the former classmates barked insults, laughing at the fact that Shen Yahya had ditched him for a rich old man. The gang leader, fueled by old grudges, went for the final blow. He mocked Han Hao's empty bank account and, with a smug grin, offered him a janitor's job so he wouldn't starve. His mistake? Thinking Han Hao would take the insult quietly. The slap echoed like thunder. Han Hao's hand hit the jokester's face with brutal precision. One warning, one more word, and the price would be high. The aggressor, ego bleeding, threatened to call his goons to end the boy's life. Han Hao didn't even flinch. He simply threw it in the spoiled heir's face that his dad's money couldn't buy courage, and that living off allowance didn't make him a man. The tense standoff shattered when an expensive perfume and a commanding presence filled the room. Shurchi appeared, freezing the moment with her beauty and icy gaze. She stared at Han Hao, teasing him about the past, asking if he regretted never making a move back in school. His response was a cold bucket of reality. He barely knew her well enough to miss anything. Wounded in pride, Shurchi masked her irritation. She noticed Mo Ye nearby, marking his territory next to Han Hao, and it fueled her anger. With no patience for what she couldn't control, the girl turned on her heel, leaving the group behind, declaring the place too small and boring for her. The scene shifted to a silent pursuit. A lowlife kept his eyes locked on Shurchi, following her every step with ill intentions. She felt the weight of the gaze and considered confronting him, but fate had a more brutal plan. A giant collided with her like a concrete wall. Irritated, she turned to shout at the distraction. The mistake was fatal. In an instant, the stranger's thick fingers clamped around her neck. Air vanished. The force was crushing, and the threat came with mockery. If she was so brave, she could now repeat who the blind fool really was. Meanwhile, Han Hao was in his own world. The crowd's noise was chaos, blinding him to Shurchi's danger. His phone vibrated with a hidden number. Retreating to a quiet corner, he answered. On the other end, Mr. Lee demanded results. 3 days had passed, and the pressure to produce the healing orb had grown. Han Hao's spine chilled. He had never given this number out. How did the man find him? Masking his nerves, he assured the caller the work was nearly done, lying confidently and promising imminent delivery. Meanwhile, the scene around him descended into carnage. Others tried to intervene but were crushed. One fighter was thrown to the ground, turned into a human punching bag with no chance to defend himself. The aggressor, a giant named Fei Long, dragged the chaos to the main hall. With sharp cynicism, he presented himself as a victim of the girl's rudeness and demanded the audience judge who was at fault. Silence fell. No one dared face the monster, not even to save Shurchi, known for her fiery temper. Exploiting everyone's cowardice, Fei Long immobilized her and dragged her to the back, seeking privacy to finish his task. He hadn't counted on the place already being occupied. Han Hao was still there, back turned, immersed in the call where Mr. Lee warned that his goons were already surrounding the building. Peace ended when the giant's shadow fell over the floor. Fei Long, hand still on Shurchi's neck, asked if the boy had a problem with his presence or methods. Confrontation was inevitable. Shock hit instantly. Turning his head, Han Hao saw a wall of muscles and felt his blood freeze. Instinct screamed retreat, pretend nothing was happening. But Fei Long's sadism knew no limits. Called a monster by the suffocating girl, he crushed her neck even harder. Shurchi's eyes begged for air. In that moment, Han Hao knew he couldn't run. It was time to face the coward. The corridor filled with students, packed at the door, hearts in mouths, doubting whether the scrawny classmate could survive a single hit from the Colossus. Fei Long released the girl and focused his fury on Han Hao. The air thickened. With explosive speed, the giant launched a brutal kick at Han Hao's face. Impact seemed certain, and the girl's screams echoed through the hall, bracing for disaster. But the hero was no longer the same. With supernatural agility, he leapt, spun through the air like lightning, and delivered a sharp warning. The enemy talked too much and fought too little. The counterattack was surgical. Han Hao's foot smashed into the giant's face, sending him crashing to the ground with humiliating force. The silence that followed was deafening. To crush the brute's pride completely, the boy mocked his ugly appearance, proving size meant nothing in front of a true master. While classmates struggled to process how the loser of the class had taken down a monster, a figure of authority entered. Mr. Lee walked through the door, applauding the boy's flawless technique. Without wasting time on introductions, Han Hao handed over the small red box. Inside was the healing orb, the artifact that defied medicine. The hero offered it for testing, and to save face, the old man swallowed the pill in one go. The transformation was instant. Heat surged through Mr. Lee's veins, bringing back a vitality he hadn't felt in decades. Reborn, the man smiled. With a firm handshake, he made the pact clear. From now on, Han Hao had Mr. Lee's power backing him up. The game had completely changed. Feng Long crawled across the floor, trying to piece together his shattered pride while spitting out empty threats. He swore revenge, yelling that the feared Boss Gu wouldn't let this humiliation slide. Han Hao only frowned, curious about this new enemy, but Mr. Lee left no room for bluffing. Nobody would threaten his new ally and walk away unscathed. Confronted and humiliated again, the giant collapsed. His body was titan-like, but his spirit was glass. Feng Long started crying pure rage and resentment. Between sobs and clenched fists, he roared that not even old men on their deathbed could mock him, promising to kill anyone who crossed him that day. Master Lu didn't twitch a muscle in his face, only narrowed his eyes. When the brute lunged in a desperate attack, the veteran moved with terrifying precision. With just 2 fingers extended, he blocked the strike with a crisp impact. The touch was so powerful that Feng Long's arm shook violently, losing all direction. Terror consumed the attacker. Tears of fear streaming down his face, he heard the master's ultimatum. If Boss Gu laid a finger on Han Hao, the consequences would be fatal. Expelled under the old man's icy gaze, the pathetic giant spun around and fled as fast as his legs could carry him. Mr. Li then bid Han Hao farewell with a knowing smile, leaving the young man to process the new power at his disposal. The turnaround in the hall was immediate. The atmosphere of disdain evaporated, replaced by shameless flattery. The same guy who had spent the whole night insulting the protagonist now appeared with a hand on his shoulder, calling him brother, and offering a diamond VIP card. Han Hao smirked at the irony. The hierarchy had shifted in seconds. Even those who had taken a beating before now tried to curry favor with the hero, offering dinners and hospitality. But the final blow to the crowd's ego came from Shu Qi. Without warning, she wrapped Han Hao in a tight hug and sealed the moment with a kiss on the cheek. The gesture froze the hall. Between the girls' jealous stares and the stunned silence of the guys, nobody dared speak. Shu-Qi didn't seem the slightest bit willing to let go of the man who, moments ago, had been a failure and was now the one controlling everyone's fate there. Mogi watched in shock, words stuck in her throat, face burning with pure indignation. The atmosphere grew heavy. Han Hao, finally snapping out of his trance and noticing everyone's gaze, stepped back sharply from Shu-Qi. With a voice thick with surprise, he demanded to know what the hell she was trying to do. Unfazed, the girl's cheeks flushed red as she delivered her verdict. From that moment on, he was hers. She promised to come back for him, leaving Han Hao frozen, mouth open, speechless. Deep in his mind, the cold voice of the system gave the ruling. The higher your power level, the more the world would crawl at your feet, begging for a crumb of your attention. He closed his eyes for a second. He understood that his destiny was relentless evolution, but for now, he just wanted to breathe. He called his friend to leave, and the invitation hit her like lightning. She couldn't believe that, after everything, he still cared to speak with her. With a shy smile and eyes cast down, she agreed to follow him. Meanwhile, in the shadows of a luxurious office, the atmosphere was warlike. The report was short and blunt. Mr. Wu had been humiliated. The order came from a faceless voice. Watch the boy, track his every move. Someone would have to get their hands dirty to restore that wounded honor. The sun rose, and the mansion became a beehive. Rumors that an important figure had landed at the city airport electrified the air. Moji was in the kitchen, lost in pots and thoughts, trying to figure out who the mysterious visitor was. Han Hao warned her that an old friend of his mother's was arriving, so she wouldn't need to wait for dinner. The door slammed, leaving Moji irritated. She wanted to impress with her feast, but duty called. The dilemma was worse. She needed to work. But Han Hao had been clear. She couldn't go alone. Danger still lurked. In the deafening chaos of Xingshui Airport, Han Hao tried to locate the target. The rescue came in a familiar shout. Aunt Su appeared, waving through the crowd, accompanied by her daughter Wang Siqin. The young woman, as usual, radiated disdain, her expression saying more than 1,000 words. Her mother apologized for the inconvenience, explaining the trip was urgent, and Han Hao was her only trusted ally. As he tried to help with the luggage, he was met with a look of disgust. Wang Siqin grimaced, refusing assistance. To her, Han Hao's simple clothes and rough demeanor were a stain on her social image. She preferred to carry the world's weight alone than be seen with someone she considered beneath her class. Tension in the car was palpable. The mother, sensing her daughter's hostility, squeezed her hand tightly, a silent signal to hold her tongue and not ruin the mood immediately. But Wang Siqin didn't care. She rolled her eyes in disdain, making it clear she wouldn't make any effort. To her, Han Hao screamed low class. The idea that her mother was trying to push her toward a suitor like him was an insult. Awkwardly, the mother tried to remedy the situation with a nervous laugh, asking him not to take the girl's difficult temperament personally. Han Hao observed silently. A bitter regret began to grow. Helping these two seemed like the perfect recipe for an endless headache. He called a taxi, and during the ride, explained that Seekin would stay at his house for a few days and that dinner was already ordered. The announcement was met with a face of disgust. The girl questioned whether they would have to cram onto a sofa, suggesting a hotel would be 1,000 times better for someone of her status. The tension got so thick that the mother finally snapped, demanding her daughter stop with the arrogance. As he stared out the window, the hero connected the dots. His mom had always wanted to push them together, and Aunt Sue's visit had obvious ulterior motives. He didn't care about the girl's scorn. He had nothing to prove to her, but fate had other plans. Suddenly, the system interface flashed in front of his eyes with an absurd mission. He had to make Wang Siqin fall in love with him. Han Hao felt a knot in his stomach, but the system was relentless. There was no opting out. The reward? Exclusive items in the shop. The method? A floating affection meter above the girl's head. Facing his friend, he saw the indicator. The goal? Hit 100 points to complete the contract. For him, facing an army or negotiating with gangsters like Old Liu seemed far more relaxing than softening the heart of this spoiled girl. The taxi finally stopped. Han Hao announced the destination, and silence filled the vehicle for a completely different reason. In front of them rose a 2-story mansion, imposing, dripping with power and luxury. Wang Siqin's expression shifted from disgust to absolute shock. Her mother, stunned, realized that the boy she had tried to help had amassed a fortune no one there had dared to imagine. The unexpected happened. Instead of impressing, the mansion's opulence sparked venom in Siqin. She was convinced it was all a facade, a rented set staged by Han Hao to fake a status he didn't have. The system beeped cruelly. Her affection points, already low, began plummeting without him even taking a step. Inside, Aunt Sue's forced hospitality only made things worse. She practically shoved Han Hao onto the sofa, trying to glue him next to her daughter. Even keeping a safe distance in the corner, Han Hao's like meter was bleeding negative points. The situation got critical when the mother, with an unsubtle wink, made up an excuse about a forgotten suitcase and left the scene. The silence that followed was suffocating. Alone with a girl who looked at him like he was a bug, Han Hao panicked. He needed to turn the tide, and his mind raced for a brilliant solution. His first tactic? A friendly smile. The problem? Under pressure, his face twisted into a bizarre grimace, more like a maniacal villain than a charming hero. The meter hit -50. Siqin seemed ready to crush him with the first thing she could grab. Her fury was obvious. Every nervous laugh of his felt like a personal insult. Desperate, hands on his head, Han Hao played his last card, a classic icebreaker about pets. When she replied, visibly bored, that she preferred dogs, he made a fatal mistake. Trying to be funny, he let out a grotesque bark in the middle of the room. The embarrassment froze the air. What should have been a flirt turned into a horror show. The sympathy meter hit absolute 0. For Siqin, he wasn't just poor or fake, he was officially repulsive. The ice wall between them became an unscalable fortress. Without a word, the girl stood and left. The system flashed red. High-risk behavior. Mission in imminent danger. Frustrated, Han Hao had no idea where he went wrong. He had followed the online seduction tutorials to the letter. It was clear that without urgent specialized help, this mission would be his biggest failure yet. With no options left, Han Hao called in someone who really had influence. After a quick phone call to Old Li, he arranged for Aunt Sue and her daughter to join him for dinner. Outside, the scene was cinematic. A luxury limousine awaited, a red rose petal carpet perfuming the walkway. The hero made sure distinguished ladies wouldn't have to endure the bumpy ride of a regular taxi. The ostentation worked. Even Siqin's sharp tongue went silent in the face of the vehicle's shine. The driver opened the door, revealing a decanted burgundy ready to be served. With the authority of a sommelier, Han Hao described the smooth notes and lingering finish of the wine, drawing surprised compliments from Aunt Sue. The affection meter jumped to 50 points. Siqin was impressed, even as her mind tried to dismiss it as a desperate facade to win her over. The final destination was a monumental restaurant exuding power. From the window, Siqin noticed a trembling puppy on the sidewalk, but the pomp of the arrival distracted her from looking twice. At the entrance, protocol was strict. No member card, no entry. Han Hao patted his pockets, cold sweat forming as he realized he'd left the diamond card at home. Humiliation seemed inevitable. Siqin let out an arrogant laugh, ready to expose the comedy of the hero. Han Hao tried to negotiate, suggesting the driver fetch the card while they entered, but the receptionist was unyielding. Rules were absolute here. The hero even offered to create a new membership on the spot, but the response was a punch to his pride. The club only accepted members by elite invitation. Things worsened when one of the staff, with a disgusted gesture, compared him to a beggar trying to force entry. Enraged by the insult, Han Hao demanded to speak directly with the owner. The romantic vibe evaporated, replaced by tense confrontation at the door of the city's most exclusive establishment. Aunt Sue, sensing imminent disaster, tried to step back and suggested they go elsewhere, but Han Hao's pride wouldn't allow such a humiliating retreat. The atmosphere thickened. The host, feeling empowered by the security's arrival, wore a disgusting smile as he ordered the men in black to forcibly remove the women. That was when he made his final mistake, spotting the small trembling dog on the sidewalk. Calling it a disgusting mutt, he prepared a brutal kick to crush it. Shock rippled through the scene. Sakine covered her mouth, eyes wide with fear for the little dog. Han Hao saw his opportunity. Remembering the girl's preference, he moved like lightning. Before the attacker's foot could strike, the hero intercepted the blow, saving the animal with surgical precision. Facing the hostess with the puppy in his arms, he shot a cold question at her about her lack of mercy. The effect was instant. Sakine's face turned bright red, and the affection meter soared. The ice wall was finally melting. Han Hao's patience snapped. With one explosive move, he delivered a punch so devastating that it sent 3 security guards flying at once. Chaos reigned until a commanding, stern voice cut through. Who here was stupid enough to risk death causing such a mess? Turning, Han Hao recognized the figure. It was the same powerful ally who had helped him on class reunion night. The man not only acknowledged the hero, but immediately invited him for tea in his private room. Han Hao, keeping his ironic tone, said he just wanted dinner, but the staff seemed reluctant to accept his presence. The game shifted abruptly. With a look that made the subordinates tremble, the restaurant owner ordered the immediate opening of the best VIP room for his brother. He declared that Han Hao should feel at home and that all expenses would be covered. With a victorious smile, the young hero accepted the offer, warning that with such hospitality, he wouldn't hesitate to use his friend's credit card. The hero handed the little dog over to the restaurant owner, stressing that the animal wasn't at fault for the irresponsibility of whoever had abandoned it. The powerful ally froze for a moment, but promised to take care of the pup. The unusual scene broke the ice. Si-Kin let out a genuine laugh, revealing a softness and charm Han Hao hadn't seen before. The luxury of the restaurant and the victorious atmosphere even made the toughest girl admit the effort had been worth it. The repulsion she felt evaporated, replaced by a growing admiration. The system beeped with a success notification. The affection bar was maxed out, just 1 point away from total victory. The toast was ready, and Si-Kin's glass trembled slightly as she raised it, but the celebration died before it began. Han Hao's phone buzzed with an image that made his blood run cold. Moi was tied up, unconscious, vulnerable. The message was an ultimatum: 30 minutes to reach the Great Dragon Bay, or it would be the end for her. Without hesitation, he jumped up, formally apologizing to the guests. Business couldn't wait. The disappointment on Si-Kin's face was clear, but in that moment, the hero had only one goal: save the life of someone who had always stood by his side. The hangar at Dragon Bay radiated danger. Han Hao stopped in front of a massive wooden door, sensing the trap. Moving inside cautiously, the scene was bleak. Moi was there, awake, but absolute terror was etched into her eyes. Ignoring his survival instincts, he sprinted toward her, shouting that she didn't need to fear anymore. He had arrived. But instead of relief, Moi shook her head violently, silently begging him to stay away. At the same time, the system interface flashed red. There was a lethal presence right behind him. The metallic sound of a blade leaving its sheath cut the air, but Han Hao's body reacted on pure instinct. He leaned back at the last millisecond, feeling the cold edge of steel brush past. Steadying himself, he faced his attacker with a mocking smile, silently calling him a clumsy cripple. It was Fei Long. The giant looked different, with a manic glare and renewed confidence. He licked the blade, signaling that pain no longer scared him and that he was ready for sacrifice. Han Hao advanced with disdain, questioning whether the brute really thought his cheap show could change the outcome of their last fight. But Fei Long changed the game. Instead of facing the hero, he spun sharply and lunged for the hostage. Han Hao had no choice. Activating his top speed, he moved in a desperate attempt to protect Moi, grabbing the sword with his bare hands. Hot blood spurted, staining the hangar floor. Instantly, a strange numbness crept up Han Hao's arm. The poison was fast-acting, shutting down his reflexes. Fei Long laughed, revealing that the weapon was the immortal assassin, forged to drain the spiritual energy of powerful masters. Without wasting a second, the hero activated the chaos technique, creating an internal barrier to stop the energy hemorrhage. The system gave its diagnosis. The injury was only due to a lapse in resistance training. Realizing the situation, Han Hao decided to play dirty. He began a theatrical display of agony, pretending the poison was overwhelming his defenses. The plan worked perfectly. Fei Long's arrogance blinded him, making him believe he finally had the prodigy at his feet. The act was so convincing that even Moi panicked, believing her savior's end had come. Triumphant, the villain started gloating, promising that once the sword finished absorbing the boy's life, he would slowly torture the girl right in front of his lifeless eyes. It was the fatal mistake. At the peak of Fei Long's monologue, Han Hao ended the act. With an icy stare and no sign of weakness, he revealed the truth. The ridiculous strike hadn't caused a scratch. The hunter had become the hunted. Panic reached its peak as Feng Long felt the hero's breath on his neck. He leapt back, incredulous. How was this kid still standing after the poison? Han Hao gave no time for explanations. In one swift move, he disarmed the giant. Desperation hit Feng Long immediately. He begged for the blade back, fearing the wrath of his master, the dreaded W. The hero just smiled, knowing the punishment for losing the weapon would be the end of the brute. Fear turned the villain into a cheap negotiator. Sweating, he offered a truce in exchange for the artifact, promising to forget past blood debts. But Han Hao doesn't negotiate with trash. The response came in a brutal sequence of strikes. The attacker was thrown across the hangar like a rag doll, with zero chance to defend against the hero's fury. With the enemy knocked out, Moi was finally free. Trembling with terror, she threw herself into her friend's arms. Han Hao comforted her with gentle reassurance, promising the nightmare was over. Through tears, she swore to follow him to the ends of the world. The hero, however, carried the weight of guilt, feeling the kidnapping had happened due to his own negligence in protecting her. Crossing the doorway home, the chaos shifted. Seekin waited with flames in her eyes, demanding explanations for the sudden restaurant abandonment. Surprisingly to the system, her affection meter still held, despite her explosive temper. Han Hao froze. How could he explain Moi's presence without destroying the fragile progress with the other girl? At that moment, facing an army seemed easier than mediating the jealousy of two women. He was ready to declare the mission lost, but fate dealt one last hand. Out of nowhere, the final point appeared on the interface. Mission complete. The system released the reward, 30 immortality points and the unlocking of the rare item shop. Inside, the hero celebrated quietly, but outwardly, the atmosphere remained a cold war. Sekin now stared at him hypnotically. In her eyes, Han Hao radiated an irresistible aura. Every movement made her shiver. Moi, noticing the electric tension in the air, shot curious and wary glances at the new rival. Trapped between two intense passions, the man who had just defeated monsters had no idea how to present the two without causing a nuclear explosion in the room. Han Hao's strategic exit was short and direct. They were just friends. But Sekin didn't buy the bluff. With a sharp gaze, she countered that no one rents limos and closes luxury restaurants for a simple friendship. Cornered by her logic, the hero could only maintain a strained smile, silently wishing the floor would swallow him and end the interrogation. The rescue came in the form of Aunt Sue. She appeared in the hallway, relieved at the boy's return. Being the family's trusted link, Han Hao tried to explain that his abrupt exit was just a business misunderstanding. The excuse was flimsy and made Sekin even more irritated, but it triggered the end of the night. Sensing the heavy tension, the young man suggested everyone retreat. Relief was immediate. He had narrowly escaped a minefield. The scene shifted to the bustling, radiant shopping center. Moi, curious, asked why they were here, and the hero explained she needed new clothes after the trauma of the kidnapping. The place was insanely crowded, buzzing with an unusual energy. The mystery was solved when Moi pointed at a colorful flyer. It was the Raw Stone Gambling Festival. Intrigued, Moji asked if this was even allowed. Han Hao explained the game. It was pure risk. Investors bought raw stones hoping to find jade inside. Even with all modern science, no machine could predict what lay beneath the surface. It had to be cut to reveal whether you'd strike it rich or lose everything in a second. At that moment, the system beeped with a bold notification. If human tech failed, the hero had an unfair advantage. The instruction was clear. Activate the X-ray amulet. With his vision altered, Han Hao scanned the displayed stones. What was a mystery to everyone else was clear as glass to him. He quickly realized most of the stones were pure junk, with no trace of real jade. As he analyzed the scene, a crafty vendor approached with a rehearsed smile, offering a specific stone and claiming its interior was promising. Moi, excited, grabbed Han Hao's arm, pointing to a green glint peeking through a crack. The vendor hyped it up further, claiming it was a once-in-a-million chance to find such a piece. Little did he know, the hero was already seeing through the lie. Han Hao's X-ray vision didn't fail. He immediately saw the stone was a fraud. The original jade had been surgically removed, the cavity filled with cheap resin. To expose the scam, Han Hao picked up a normal stone of equal size and confronted the vendor, questioning why the valuable stone was so much heavier than the regular one. Silence fell over the festival. The weight trick had been revealed for everyone to see. The vendor, sensing a loss, growled, telling the boy to buy something or shut up. The crowd murmured. Many knew of the tricks but lacked the courage to call them out. Unfazed, Han Hao discarded the fake stone and walked to the scrap section, the junkyard of the event, where stones were sold dirt cheap. He pointed to a massive raw rock and announced he'd take it. The vendor sneered, mocking him for choosing a low-priced stone, claiming the boy wasn't elite enough for the real game. Han Hao's icy gaze met the vendor's, replying, "The truth would reveal itself under the saw blade." The crowd laughed, betting the fool was buying worthless junk. But when the cutting disc sliced through the stone, the laughter died. A pure, intense green exploded from inside, the highest quality jade, in abundance. Moy was mesmerized by her friend's precision. Within seconds, Han Hao was surrounded by suited bigwigs, each shouting higher offers than the last. The bidding war was frantic until an older man with the presence of a tycoon outbid everyone. Han Hao's phone buzzed, a bank notification for 500,000 yuan. The buyer smiled at the young man, commenting that the sharks in this market loved devouring rookies, but he seemed different. Han Hao laughed, saying he could already smell the dishonesty in the air. Surprised by the boy's savvy, the man asked how he dared invest in junk after almost being scammed. The hero shrugged, attributing it all to his unfailing intuition. Impressed, the new ally challenged Han Hao to test his luck again, leading him to the Imperial Stone section, where each rock was worth a fortune. The system confirmed the area was filled with real treasures. The new challenge. Among so many jewels, Han Hao had to find the crown of the festival. Among the Imperial stones, a giant one caught his eye. Activating his X-ray vision, the scene was surreal. The interior overflowed with jade so pure, its real value exceeded 2 million, though the price tag said only 360,000. Han Hao didn't hesitate. He approached a vendor and announced the purchase, demanding an immediate cut. At payment, the new friend stepped in with a generous smile, offering to cover the cost as an ally of the boy. Han Hao, focused on the imminent fortune, let the man take the lead. When the saw finally revealed the green treasure, the hall went silent. Shock rippled through the crowd. No one believed the rookie had hit it right twice. Within seconds, offers of 2.3 million came flying from every side. The hero smiled, ready to close the deal, but a stranger interrupted, claiming the sale for himself. With sharp cynicism, the man declared the jade his, since he had paid for the raw stone. It hit like a punch. Han Hao had been duped. The man's strategy was clear. If the stone had been junk, the loss would have been the boy's. But since it was a treasure, he stole the profit. Amid the crowd's mocking laughter at the young man's naivety, the trickster waved and walked off, claiming he had another auction to attend. Moy watched her friend anxiously, noticing that instead of defeat, his face radiated a dangerous determination. Han Hao wouldn't accept humiliation. He promised the stone game had only just begun, and he would prove his worth in the most brutal way possible. The announcement for the main auction echoed through Radiant, calling in the elite, but a barrier emerged. To enter, a 2 million yuan deposit was required. Frustrated but far from giving up, the young man realized his balance was still insufficient for VIP entry. Calmly, he turned around. If he needed cash fast, the exhibition festival still had plenty of paving stones waiting to be devoured by his supernatural vision. The receptionist raised an eyebrow, incredulous. The boy spoke of acquiring 2 million yuan as if he were exchanging coins at a bakery. Meanwhile, the elite auction continued in a trail of despair. Stone after stone was cut, revealing only useless rubble. One bidder, on the brink of collapse, nursed the losses of 3 massive, completely empty stones. It was in this moment of grim silence that the inexperienced rookie kicked open the game door. Han Hao appeared, dragging a heavy sack overflowing with raw stones, giving a short, sharp order. He wanted every stone cut, one by one. Shock spread through the hall. The elite erupted in indignation, laughing at what they called a farce. They shouted that this wasn't a street fair, and that real jade couldn't be chosen like Chinese cabbage. With airs of superiority, the veterans tried to teach him a lesson, warning that the game had already bankrupted far more powerful men, but the mockery died in their throats. The saw's sound was replaced by the frantic announcements of the technicians. Jade, and not just one piece. Green brilliance exploded from every stone Han Hao brought from the sack. It was an impossible sequence, a mountain of precious minerals appearing before the eyes of those who had mocked him. The mood shifted from scorn to wild frenzy. Nobody knew who this boy was, or how he operated, but one thing was clear: he was looting the auction. Without losing composure, the hero ordered Moy to manage the transactions and collect payments from the clients now crowding around, desperate for a piece of his luck. Han Hao's audacity in selling rare jewels like everyday trinkets irritated the purists, but money spoke louder than tradition. The line of buyers grew by the second. Laughing at the irony of fate, the young man called for calm and order, while the constant ping of banking notifications on his phone became the soundtrack of his victory. By the end of the marathon, Han Hao's account balance had skyrocketed to astronomical numbers, instantly making him a titan of the market. In the corner, Moy watched in silence, finally asking the inevitable question: how the hell could he see what no one else could? The chaos wasn't over. Han Hao barely had a chance to breathe before the man who had suffered 3 consecutive defeats threw himself at his feet, desperate and in tatters. The guy begged to know the secret behind such precision. Caught off guard, the hero felt the weight of the discomfort, but his quick mind was already plotting a way out. With a transcendental air of mystery, he started dictating absurd rules. Jade only revealed itself to those with eyes beyond the ordinary, and the search had to be conducted through the chakra of the heart. While the new disciple, in a trance, closed his eyes mid-aisle trying to sense the energy of the stones, Han Hao used the distraction to slip away without leaving a trace. Moy eyed him suspiciously, but he just shrugged, sealing the matter with a simple claim: his methods were state secrets. The girl's question about why they were even there was answered by action. Han Hao reminded her that, before any auction, the priority was her. He gave Moy free rein to pick every piece she wanted, diving into a marathon of showcases and fitting rooms. The hero resigned himself to the waiting bench, but boredom evaporated in a second. When Moy emerged from the fitting room, time seemed to stop. She wore a stunning outfit that sculpted her figure perfectly, transforming the once ordinary girl into a magazine cover star. Han Hao was mesmerized. For the first time, he saw the woman behind the childhood clothes. She radiated overwhelming beauty and a smile that lit up the entire mall. The realization hit him hard. The silly little girl from before was gone. With a refreshed look and a fat wallet, the pair finally headed to the VIP section of the auction. Han Hao laid down the $1,000,000 deposit without blinking, securing their place in the final stretch. Inside, the tension was palpable. Only 3 lots remained. The auctioneer announced the ultimate challenge: raw, unprecedented stones that had never been pre-inspected. While other bidders broke into a sweat, Han Hao and his ally exchanged confident glances. For the hero, the verdict was already clear even before the first bid. With his absolute vision, he already knew who held a treasure and who was holding a useless rock. The auctioneer chuckled nervously, treating Han Hao's overconfidence like a parlor joke before opening lot 131 at 500,000 yuan. In the corner, the con man who had fooled Han Hao earlier consulted his mentor. The old master, with a clinical gaze, dismissed the piece, insisting it wasn't worth the investment. Spotting Han Hao in the audience, the trickster couldn't resist taunting him, asking why the lucky boy wasn't bidding. Han Hao didn't even look back. He simply pointed out the stone's technical flaws, explaining that its deep cracks and soft texture would turn it to dust. His analysis was so precise it shocked the con man's mentor. The young man's words matched his secret conclusions exactly. The auction moved to the next lot, with bids starting at 800,000. The old master warned his pupil about imperfections in the stone, suggesting they save their ammunition for the final lot. Han Hao ignored conventional signals and jumped into the fray aggressively, ready to pay a fortune for the piece everyone else deemed too risky. The con man smirked maliciously, anticipating his rival's bankruptcy. Once the stone was secured, the hero demanded it be opened right there under everyone's watchful eyes. Tension peaked as cameras projected the cut in real time onto the hall's screens. Silence fell until a translucent glow erupted across the display. A legendary ice jade, flawless and pure. While the auctioneer shouted congratulations, the con man's mentor nearly toppled from his chair. That piece was worth over 10 million, and whispers began circulating that the boy might be manipulating the market. The tension exploded with the announcement of the final lot. the crown jewel of the event, starting at 2.3 million yuan. Inspired by Han Hao's absurd success, bids skyrocketed in seconds. The old master, desperate not to leave empty-handed, ordered his pupil. Any bid under 8 million would be certain profit. For the first time that night, the villains went all in, sparking a bidding war against the rest of the hall. Han Hao's entry into the final lot transformed the auction into a personal battlefield. The con man, who had previously underestimated him, began losing composure under the pressure. Bids climbed rapidly until the hero hit 4.2 million yuan. Tension spiked when the auctioneer halted proceedings. Allegations arose that the boy was bidding beyond his means. As a newcomer without history, the organization suspected a bluff to inflate prices and threatened to ban him. But Han Hao didn't flinch. With a challenging gaze, he demanded the right to prove his solvency. With an irritating calm, he admitted he was a rookie, there only for fun, but revealed his trump card. He owned a mansion worth over 100 million yuan. He allowed an immediate audit, making clear his finances were unquestionable. More than money, he stated he would never accept humiliation in front of the woman he loved. His destiny was always to claim what he desired. Moye felt her face burn, frozen between embarrassment and awe. Backstage, the gray-haired master struggled to process the info. Reports from his informants were incredible. The country boy had opened 10 stones in a row, and all contained jade. His luck wasn't human. With assets verified, the auctioneer returned to the stage with a formal apology, validating Han Hao's bid. Other bidders tried to cover the amount, but the hero obliterated all resistance. He declared he was willing to go to 100 million if necessary, just to turn this stone into the most valuable gift in the world for his girlfriend. Silence fell like a shroud. The audience was spellbound, the announcer trembling, barely able to pronounce the numbers. No one dared challenge the man willing to burn a fortune for love. At the last second, the silence shattered with a roar from the gray-haired man. 105 million. The master tried to restrain his pupil, but the con man was blinded by greed, convinced that if Han Hao wanted the stone so badly, it was a ticket to ultimate fortune. He was willing to burn his entire estate rather than be humiliated again by the boy. The bidding war turned into a financial massacre. Han Hao shot up to 120 million. The rival countered. The hero climbed to 140 million. In a move of pure desperation and arrogance, the gray-haired young man shouted his final bid, 150 million yuan. The silence that followed was shattered by a clear, ringing laugh. Han Hao sat back, legs crossed, giving up the bid with an ironic wave. The opponent, tasting victory, mocked the boy, reminding him that he had claimed he always got what he wanted. With a tone dripping in sarcasm, the hero dramatically surrendered, praising Mr. Wang's raw power. To cap the performance, he suggested that the winner open the treasure right there so everyone could witness the birth of the world's most expensive jewel. Ignoring his mentor's ominous intuition, the con man ordered the immediate cut. Tension gripped the room. The audience held its breath as the diamond blade sank into the stone. The start of the cut looked promising, but as the blade advanced, color drained from everyone's faces. The finale was a tomb-like silence. The 150 million yuan stone was nothing but a block of worthless granite. The annual auction ended on the sound of Mr. Wang's financial disaster. With a cynical smile, Han Hao comforted his rival, saying he shouldn't blame himself for such a promising stone coming up empty. The realization hit the trickster like a hammer. He understood he had been manipulated from the very first bid. Han Hao had played the desire game perfectly to push him off the cliff. Feigning innocence, the hero claimed no one could ever know what was inside a raw stone. As a final act of mockery, he thanked his friend for preventing him from losing everything. To truly seal the point and show he was above such mediocrity, Han Hao even offered a small portion of his previous profits to the loser, making it clear he already had what he wanted, and the man's hostility was now irrelevant compared to his new fortune. Mr. Wang, trembling with rage, clenched the worthless stone fragments in his hands. The humiliation was complete. Han Hao, watching his rival's downfall, remarked with sharp cynicism on the 100 million yuan loss, calling the con man's masterstroke a simple case of negligence. With a victorious grin, he even suggested that the expert collect the pieces from the floor, reminding everyone that the treasure he had already amassed dwarfed that pathetic stone. The mockery was the spark. No one had ever dared to trample on Van's pride like this. Consumed by rage, he transformed. Moy sensed the danger and shouted a warning, but Van was already moving like a blur. The strike came with inhuman force, forcing Han Hao to defend himself on pure instinct. The power was surreal, beyond any mortal limit. The system issued an immediate alert. Van was no ordinary cultivator. He had resorted to desperation. The villain had consumed a vital energy pill, a forbidden resource that condensed the user's entire life into a single moment of destructive power, but at a terrible cost. The tension was unbearable. Han Hao feared the worst, but in an unexpected move, Moye leapt between them. She stood as a human shield, demanding the carnage end immediately. The hero tried desperately to pull her away, fearing for her life, but she remained firm. With flames in her eyes, she confronted Van, throwing the truth in his face. He was the one who started the dirty game, and now he acted like a mindless animal. The impact of Moy's courage and beauty struck Van like a punch. He froze, hypnotized, unable to respond. Then fate claimed its toll. The villain's body began to fail. His vital energy stopped flowing, but the side effect was stranger than Han Hao could have imagined. The pill was chemically unstable in the presence of the opposite sex. The system confirmed the theory. Van was completely neutralized by Moy's proximity. As long as she stood in front, the monster was just a helpless, agonizing man. Han Hao felt a mix of rage and relief. Her very presence was the ultimate weapon against his rival's madness. Han Hao's protection was absolute. He would never use his girlfriend as a shield. The risk was a price only he would pay, turning danger into a personal adrenaline spectacle. In that chaotic scene of gambling and relics, the raw stone market was a minefield dominated by scammers ready to strip the unsuspecting. The market's silence was broken by the dull thud of Mr. Wang collapsing on the counter, the life drained from his eyes in an instant. Before chaos could fully erupt, the Jade Association surrounded the cheating seller. The trap was closed. Victims appeared from all sides, revealing hollow stones that had cost fortunes. Amid the confusion, a man obsessed with Han Hao's talent delivered checkmate. He claimed to have meditated for hours, trying to see inside the stones, and his madness became the final proof needed to bury the fraudster. The news of the ruin reached the Shadow Master quickly. In a dark office, the man pulling the strings of the scheme received the report. Han Hao had destroyed everything. Fury overflowed. Glass exploded in his hands, shattering as his hatred for the intruder surpassed any fear of old rivals. Far away, calm had returned. As they walked toward the village, Moy broke the silence with a smile, intrigued by Han Hao's new demeanor. She remembered the promise made at the auction about a jade gift for his girlfriend, but the hero, already thinking elsewhere, didn't catch the malice. He assumed she wanted a jewel for herself, and, with a confident grin, promised they would handle it together next time. What was a favor to him felt like the beginning of something much more intimate to her. The ringtone broke the moment. It was Aunt Sue, notifying that plans had changed. The trip was ending early because her daughter was causing trouble. Moye tried to return to the romance topic but was silenced. Han Hao locked eyes with her, holding her shoulders with an intensity that froze her. Her heart raced, expecting a declaration, while he simply said she only needed to say yes. Her mind spiraled with embarrassment and anticipation, only to be slammed by reality. The hero just wanted her to finish his college assignment. The shock came with the reminder that classes started the next day, and he was staring at a blank sheet. With a sigh of mixed relief and disappointment, she realized his obsession was with Jade, not her heart. Moye hid her frustration, pretending she never expected more. The next morning, Tsinghua University's courtyard became a stage for a bizarre scene. Han Hao strolled in with a hot pink backpack covered in bows and pom-poms, ignoring the laughter and mocking stares. For him, carrying Moye's belongings was the least he could do after she had saved his academic life. Her embarrassment was clear, begging for her things back, but he didn't care what anyone thought. Peace was shattered by the roar of an engine. An orange car tore through the campus, stopping abruptly. From the open door emerged a familiar figure, the owner of the restaurant they had visited the day before. Visibly uncomfortable and forcing a friendship that didn't exist, the man acted as if years had passed since their last meeting, ignoring that it had been less than 24 hours. Han Hao's reflexes were faster than danger. In a swift move, he pulled the old acquaintance out of the car's path, saving him by a hair. The morning's silence was shattered by the metallic crash of the vehicle being mangled. Xiao Yang screamed in pure terror as he watched his own car crushed mercilessly. From the wreckage emerged a provocative figure, Yan Bing. With a cynical smile, the blonde justified the destruction, claiming he was just cleaning the spot that was now his. The tone was pure humiliation. He treated Xiao Yang's car like garbage. Tensions escalated as the class war flared. Yan Bing sneered at Xiao Yang's family downfall, declaring he would never accept a loser as an equal. Xiaoyang's fists trembled. Fury bubbled inside him, ready to erupt into a fight right there on the asphalt. But Han Hao stepped in. A firm hand on his friend's shoulder forced the calm he needed. This wasn't the moment to stoop to that level. With chilling composure, Han Hao walked over to the blonde. The request was simple. He wanted his backpack back, since the car had been parked on it. Yan Bing shot back arrogantly, daring anyone to touch his property. The hero just shrugged, getting the permission he needed in his own logic. Without warning, Han Hao delivered a brutal kick to the luxury car. The impact made the frame groan, and the arrogant Yan Bing stumbled back, shocked to see his untouchability literally kicked to the curb. With the car forced aside, the hero snatched the pink backpack from under the wheels and walked back calmly, leaving a trail of destruction and a rival seething with rage behind him. In the blink of an eye, the scene changed. Han Hao threw himself to the ground, grabbing Yan Bing's leg and shouting for anyone who would listen. The rich heir was attacking a poor, defenseless student. Yan Bing froze, bewildered by the act, and roared for him to stop pretending to be the victim in broad daylight. But the performance already had its audience. The courtyard fell silent. The hero raised his voice, accusing the blonde of destroying his car and beating him without mercy. Han Hao's fake desperation was so convincing that the crowd began murmuring. Yan Bing, losing control, ordered him to let go and shut up, but the damage was done. In the corners, Xiaoyang and Mo Ye already had their phones out, capturing every second of this humiliation. Xiaoyang caught on immediately, making sure the angles for the setup were perfect. When Yan Bing realized he had walked into a professional trap, he growled with fury, but Han Hao just gave a cold smile. For trash like this, only cunning and strength worked. Cornered, the blonde tried one last move, the classic, "My dad runs this place." He flaunted his family influence on the board, thinking fear would win. The response was pure irony. Han Hao screamed, feigning exaggerated terror, mocking the threat before ending the act. His fist shot out, connecting full force with Yan Bing's face. As the enemy staggered, the ultimatum came. Either pay to fix Xiaoyang's car now, or the bullying video would go viral and ruin the rich kid's reputation. But the university battlefield was complex. Even with a momentary victory, the school council wouldn't let it slide. An official radiating intimidation delivered the verdict. Han Hao would face exemplary punishment for vandalism and assault. The lesson would be harsh, showing that no one was untouchable in that territory. News of Han Hao's expulsion hit the campus like a bomb. Outrage spread. Everyone knew Yan Bing was the real architect of this injustice. Before the council, the hero tried reason, explaining the attack had started in the parking lot, but the administration demanded impossible proof, turning a blind eye selectively. To the suits, it was unthinkable that a noble student like Yan Bing could raise a hand at someone. Behind the bench, the aggressor's father, Yan Tianxing, watched with a smug smile. He arrogantly gave the final verdict. The fact that his son was in the hospital was enough to banish Han Hao forever, ignoring any context. Han Hao's blood boiled. He stood and walked toward the podium with a presence so intimidating the counselors recoiled, trembling. Without lowering his voice, he exposed the corruption. Yan Bing destroyed a friend's car, started the fight, and tried to hide behind his dad's position. And to crush the lie completely, he played his trump card. With a swift command, the setup video was blasted to every student's phone simultaneously. The courtyard and auditorium erupted into a frenzy of shouts and arguments. The evidence was clear and undeniable. Cornered, the administration tried desperately to regain control, accusing the boy of breaking discipline rules and trying to sully the university's honor. But Han Hao no longer took orders. Turning to the crowd, he threw the question that lit the fire. Is being poor now a synonym for being a punching bag for heirs? Yan Bing's father, purple with rage, swore revenge, but the hero only looked at him with disdain. He declared that under such mediocre, corrupt leadership, a diploma was worthless. The support was instant. The auditorium roared in unison, calling the dean useless and cowardly for oppressing the weak. The tide had turned, and the university realized, too late, that it had created a problem far bigger than it could handle. Yan Bing's father, boiling with anger, circled the dean. The message was clear. He funded the place and demanded an immediate solution to crush that insolent kid. The courtroom-like atmosphere was interrupted by the arrival of a heavyweight. Mr. Lee, a senior member of the administration, appeared, questioning the commotion. Seeing the veteran, the official presiding over the session broke into a cold sweat. The panic of explaining this injustice to an honest superior was clear on his face. Sensing the corrupt official's hesitation, Han Hao didn't waste time. With a gesture, he stirred the student body, turning murmurs into open rebellion against the council. Cornered and fearing total loss of control, the dean ended the session abruptly and summoned the hero to his office. Han Hao's fate hung in the balance. Would it be permanent expulsion or an unexpected turnaround? Behind closed doors, the masks fell. Mr. Lee, oblivious to the gravity, was reassured by staff with forced smiles and lies, while the old man just laughed, confident his team could handle any small problem. But behind the doors, the tone shifted. The dean issued an ultimatum. Han Hao must publicly apologize and admit the video was fake. Threats followed, promising to turn his academic life into a living hell through sheer oppression. The hero remained motionless, expression ice cold. He wouldn't apologize to trash that got what it deserved. Yan Tianxing's rage overflowed. To him, the boy needed to be taught a lesson for not knowing his place. That's when Han Hao activated his special vision. Scanning the rival father's body, he identified the source of his arrogance. The man wasn't just a rich bureaucrat. He had advanced combat techniques and the aura of an experienced fighter. The game was no longer just political, it was about brute force. Han Hao connected the dots quickly. Xiaoyang's expulsion was Yan Tianxing's master plan to eliminate the family's commercial competition, using his own son as bait in the parking lot provocation. The shock on the businessman's face was proof enough. The mask of benevolence fell, revealing the hatred of someone whose plans had been ruined by an intruder. Mr. Lee watched the tension rise while Yan Bing's father growled, calling the accusations cheap slander. But Han Hao's smile was venom. He knew he had won the mental battle. Out of control, the villain charged forward, attacking with a ferocity that demanded respect. For the hero, time slowed. He knew that against a martial arts master, any slip would be fatal. The clash of energy was invisible, but devastating. Yan Tianxing felt the impact of a force no student should ever wield. His attacks, famed as stone fists, either struck nothing or were deflected by an impenetrable barrier. Han Hao mocked his opponent's fragility, questioning if age had finally caught up with such a renowned fighter. The turnaround was cinematic. Han Hao intercepted a blow, grabbed the man's arm with an iron grip, and twisted it brutally. The crack of bone echoed through the office, followed by a scream that shredded the silence. With sharp cynicism, the hero released the broken arm and feigned a sarcastic apology, lamenting that he had overdone it a bit. Humiliated and trembling, Yan Tianxing swore he would pay for that insult with blood. In a final desperate move, he concentrated all his inner energy into a finishing strike, but Han Hao moved like a ghost, dodging perfectly. The alert system in his mind went off. The enemy was resorting to lethal internal forces. It was the signal to activate the chaos technique and end this game once and for all before things spiraled out of control. Han Hao sent a mental query to the system. Why had the warning about the lethal attack come so late? The mistake had nearly been fatal, but now he had the key to dismantle his opponent. Before Yan Tianxing's final strike could land, an invisible barrier materialized, blocking the impact and throwing the veteran back as if he'd hit a steel wall. The shock froze the room. Yan Tianxing, master of the stone fists, stared at his own hands, unable to comprehend how his energy had been nullified by a kid. For Han Hao, watching that monument of arrogance crumble to the floor was the peak of the show. Even Mr. Lee, observing from the sidelines, couldn't hold back laughter at the businessman's humiliating knockout. Despite the victory, the hero felt the weight of the system's negligence. If the shield hadn't appeared, the attack would have been fatal. The system evasively blamed a technical glitch, but Han Hao realized he was being manipulated. His trust in that voice had just been shattered. The hero's focus shifted. Locking eyes on the dean, he declared that it was time for a reckoning. Han Hao laid out the raw truth. The university leader was a puppet, selling his authority to cover up the crimes of the powerful. The dean, desperate, tried to expel him with yelling, but the atmosphere shifted with the sharp thud of a glass of water hitting the desk. Mr. Lee demanded total silence. Exhausted by the circus and hysteria, the veteran imposed his presence, silencing the room with a single gesture. The dean, panicked and guilt-ridden, tried to explain before being formally accused. In a humiliating slip, he began listing his own crimes: overpriced construction contracts for relatives, illegal property sales, swearing none of it was true, while handing over his entire web of corruption on a silver platter. Han Hao could barely believe the scale of the rot. He had thought the dean was just a petty opportunist, but the list of crimes was worthy of a crime syndicate. Panic consumed the leader when he realized Mr. Lee wasn't interested in his flimsy excuses. The game completely flipped. The white-haired veteran revealed he was the university's top investor and, with a symbolic handshake, thanked Han Hao. The hero had just kicked the hornet's nest that had blinded the investor. The parasites sucking the institution dry were finally exposed. When the door slammed shut, the dean's scream echoed down the hall. His empire of lies was collapsing. For the first time, Han Hao tasted real power. Having an ally of that caliber was intoxicating and invigorating. He returned home late at night, under the cloak of silence, feeling the weight of every event from the day as he collapsed onto his bed. His body begged for rest, but his mind was a whirlwind of uncertainty. He had won the battle, but had no idea what the next move on the board would be. The respite from worldly duties felt like a reward, but peace was short-lived. A familiar, nagging voice demanded its price. The system, relentless, ordered him to stop wasting time and focus on refining the chaos technique. It wasn't just advice. It was a command to master the energy on his own, without crutches. Exhausted, the raw power now coursed through the boy's veins. A physical transformation that left no doubt. The method worked, but the system was dangerous. The basic manual only took him to the superhuman level. Beyond that, every step toward the top cost immortality points. While many sought enlightenment to become gods, the boy wanted something more direct. He didn't just seek spiritual peace. He wanted total strength to be free and shape the world as he saw fit. The hero rose, focused on his own limits, until the courtyard gate creaked. Mr. Lee appeared, observant, questioning if Han Hao had broken the soul's consciousness barrier. With a calm smile, the boy admitted he was still at the superhuman level. The conversation shifted when the old man revealed the reason for the visit. The dean had been kicked out, and the chaos from earlier was buried. The boy could return to his studies, though the thought of facing homework was hardly a dream. But relief was brief. Mr. Lee dropped the name of the true enemy, Yan Yanxing, thirsty for revenge. The warning was clear, the danger real. The old man offered his support, leaving the tension hanging. As night swallowed the city, the scene shifted to an abandoned building with a sinister vibe. Amid cigar smoke, a cold, powerful man humiliated Yan Bin's father. His subordinate had failed miserably against Han Hao and was now paying the price of shame. The villain's goal was clear: test the boy's courage and crush his audacity, turning resentment into a relentless hunt. Contempt boiled in the boss's voice as he questioned how a kid could humiliate veteran warriors. On his knees, pride in ruins, Mr. Yan admitted that ordinary techniques hadn't even scratched the boy. He begged for intervention, using the aggression against his own son as a shield for his thirst for blood. The leader smashed his cigar in the ashtray. Patience was gone. The primordial pill, a treasure stolen from his messengers, was in Han Hao's hands. The trail of filth was too big to ignore. The order was cruel and direct. Call Mr. Wu and hire a professional assassin. The target was Han Hao, but there was a vital condition. They had to extract the pill's location before the hit. Hate now came with a price and an executor. The sun rose bright, masking the city's rot. As he walked, Han Hao received a frantic call from Moshe. Rumors traveled fast. The hero's financial penalties had been canceled. With total indifference and a hint of irony, the boy decided he wasn't stepping foot on campus today. Getting expelled didn't happen every day, and he intended to savor this forced day off before returning to the routine. But danger doesn't take a day off. At the entrance of a diner, watchful eyes tracked him. A man hid behind a newspaper, another in a black jacket pretending to be distracted, but their ears were locked on the boy. Han Hao dumped mountains of sugar into his coffee, acting oblivious. After hanging up, he ordered a lemonade and headed to a restaurant, submerged in a mood that seemed unshakable. It was all pure theater. Behind that relaxed face, the hero's mind worked like a radar. He mapped the room, divided the space into sectors, and identified every observer. The moment his gaze locked on them, the restaurant fell into a deathly silence. The spies froze. The mask had dropped, and the cat-and-mouse game had just leveled up. The sharp silence was broken by the counter guy yelling that the lemonade was ready. Han Hao walked up, but his instincts screamed danger. The worker hadn't even asked about the sugar or ice. With an ironic smile, the boy asked the question that exposed the enemy. "You actually work here?" Time seemed to stop. The supposed server's hand froze mid-air, and a sinister red energy flickered between his fingers. In a snap, a razor-sharp blade slashed toward Han Hao's neck. By pure reflex and survival instinct, he dodged by millimeters. The disguise had fallen. Frustrated, the assassin admitted he thought Han Hao's act was flawless, but the boy laughed, pointing out the murky, poisoned color of the drink. Han Hao's gaze swept the room, exposing the attacker's amateur mistakes. A green-haired man tried to hide behind a newspaper, but Han Hao flipped him upside down effortlessly. Another was flinging sugar frantically, and a third wore a bizarre gray suit. Together, a team of failures. It was clear, the whole restaurant was a trap. The leader of the group tossed his vendor hat aside and decided to end the performance. They introduced themselves as the four brothers: gold, wood, water, and fire. With arrogance, they revealed that Han Hao's life had been bought and promised a death so quick he wouldn't even feel it. The boy faked theatrical despair, mourning the tragic loss of someone so handsome, all to extract information about who had ordered the hit. The brothers tried to keep their professional ethics, claiming they didn't know the client, but their stupidity spoke louder. When pressed about the boss, one of them blurted out the name Grandmaster Wu. The slip was so grotesque that the brother next to him started pounding him to shut him up. While the assassins brawled among themselves, Han Hao dug through his memory. The name Wu sounded familiar, but the puzzle hadn't yet clicked. Confident they were facing a weakling, the four brothers took their positions. The act was over. The bloodbath was about to begin. The fear that had been on Han Hao's face vanished instantly when he realized the theater was done. The pink-haired girl hadn't fallen for it. She'd already noticed his balance and reflexes, recognizing a high-level warrior. Without further words, the group drew a heavy arsenal. Blades cut through the air, but the hero dodged with irritating ease, mocking the pathetic aim of his attackers. But the assassin's smile was dark. She revealed the target was never his body. Han Hao looked up and realized the trap. He had been lured into a kill zone, surrounded by a structure functioning like a deadly cage. While he had been distracted by their provocations, the trap had been sealed. The brother in the gray suit laughed, showing off his masterpiece, a high-density chemical glue that pinned Han Hao's feet to the floor. He was immobilized. The sadistic fun continued. The other two brothers prepared the grand finale. Gallons of alcohol and firecrackers. They vibrated with cruelty, eager to watch the target burn. The explosives flew through the air, aiming for him, but Han Hao's mind worked at superhuman speed. He refused to accept defeat. In a move defying logic and physics, he unleashed an explosive force, breaking the inertia. Before the Molotovs hit the ground, he snatched them mid-air with impossible agility. The four brothers froze, mouths open. Nobody should have been able to jump like that or react with that speed. With an icy glare, Han Hao reminded them, lost items should be returned to their owners. He hurled the bottles back with surgical precision. The fire meant to consume him now engulfed the attackers instead, turning their confidence into screams and flames that devoured everything around. The brothers' blind rage delayed their realization of the burning flesh and fabric, but panic set in when they saw they were about to become human torches. As they scrambled to put out the flames, the pink-haired girl commanded the counterattack, ordering the use of whirlwind spheres. Han Hao, however, strolled calmly into the chaos. With a knowing smile, he revealed he finally remembered who Mr. Wu was. The old man had something that belonged to him, but Han Hao had something the boss wanted. In one fluid motion, the hero drew an imposing sword. The shock was immediate. The mercenaries recognized the legendary immortal blade, the lost weapon of their master. Han Hao couldn't resist taunting, questioning if they had any idea how he had gotten it. He channeled his energy, releasing a devastating strike that shattered the glue trap on his feet. Free and radiating power, he made it clear. No chains were strong enough to hold him. The game turned cruel. Han Hao collected the weapons the enemies had thrown and returned them with interest. The pink-haired girl realized her own kill zone had trapped her. His precision was terrifying. The blade cut through the air with a speed that defied sight, slicing the assassin's clothing with millimeter accuracy without touching a single inch of skin, a technical mastery that left her in utter shock. As the leader came to terms with the fact that her strength was a joke compared to his, the other three brothers froze in terror. Han Hao laughed at the absurdity. He hadn't even fought seriously yet, and they already looked ready for a funeral. Desperate, the girl roared that she still had a trump card and ordered the brothers to call Mr. Wu while she bought time. But looking back, betrayal cut deeper than fire. Her allies were already retreating, leaving her behind under the empty promise of protection. The relief of seeing them run turned into absolute horror when Han Hao's shadow loomed over her. His cold, sarcastic voice echoed, "Your friends leaving already without saying goodbye?" A scream of pure terror ripped from her throat. She saw the brothers hesitate, torn between fleeing and rescuing, yelling for her to fight. But it was too late. With tears streaming and voice breaking, she begged for help she knew wouldn't come. The predator had finally cornered his prey. Rescue had been an illusion. No one would arrive in time. Blood boiling at the mercenary's pathetic game, Han Hao activated the chaos technique. The atmosphere cracked under the pressure of his power. With a roar of pure energy, he didn't just strike the girl. He swept all 4 brothers in one motion, hurling them out of the building like rag dolls. In mid-air, the pink-haired leader could only think of the trail of destruction and her own humiliation. Walking calmly among the wreckage and fallen bodies, the hero pulled out his phone. With an ironic grin, he reported a robbery on the commercial street, assuring the police the gang had been properly handled. The scene turned into a circus. Sirens, flashing lights, and reporter Sho Budui, eager for an exclusive on the civilian who'd taken down a gang alone. Han Hao tried to dodge the spotlight, but eventually gave in to a photo. "Make it look good," he joked. The result? A messy, chaotic image splashed across the front page, far from the glamour he had imagined. In the city's luxury offices, the photo ignited a fuse of rage. The white-haired leader crushed the newspaper, stunned that Mr. Wu's trusted men had failed so spectacularly. Mr. Yan tried to downplay it as luck, but doubt hung heavy in the air. The boss decided to pull back strategically, leaving Yan stewing over his failure and his lack of power. While his enemies got lost in their conspiracies, Han Hao focused on what really mattered, a good meal. At the restaurant, Zhao Yang greeted him like royalty, overflowing with gratitude. Thanks to Han Hao's intervention in the Yan Biel incident, his academic future had been saved. Between bites, Zhao Yang dropped an unexpected proposal. He would provide the capital for a new venture. Han Hao would take the lead at karaoke color. The light in the young hero's eyes made the answer obvious. He was about to take control of the game. The karaoke's location was perfect, just steps from the university, making it a gold mine. Han Hao didn't hesitate. He agreed on the spot. Zhao Yang, surprised but ecstatic, sealed the deal, calling the hero brother. Glasses clinked, laughter filled the air, and Xiao Yang would handle the paperwork as a new era of karaoke color began. After the feast, Han Hao returned home, euphoric but stuffed, craving nothing more than his bed. But the metallic, commanding voice of the system cut into his thoughts. Immediate training. The shock was real, but the order was clear. The mission, elevate the chaos technique to level 2. He tried to focus on immortality points, but his body protested, and a heavy sleep knocked him out before he even started. When he woke, it felt like he'd been flattened by a ton of iron. The system was relentless. Han Hao's body was still too weak to handle the raw energy of the chaos technique, triggering a safety shutdown. As he struggled to process his weakness, his phone buzzed. Xiao Yang screamed about an absolute emergency before hanging up. Without hesitation, Han Hao sprinted to the karaoke, sensing that the new venture was already under attack. The moment he arrived, a violent crash shattered the silence. A window exploded behind him, glass spraying across the floor. Han Hao turned, feigning fear he didn't feel, only to face Mr. Yan and a bizarre-looking old master. The audacity of these men stunned him. They truly hadn't learned their lesson? His gaze, however, drifted upward, locking onto the old man's ridiculous ponytail, standing alone like an island in the middle of the ocean. Han Hao struggled to keep from laughing in the face of danger. Mr. Yan, interpreting the smirk as shock and submission, grinned victoriously, sure that his master's presence would be the end of the boy. The stage was set for a new showdown, and respect was the last thing Han Hao planned to give. Han Hao sized up the intruders with disdain, wondering if Mr. Yan had lost his mind bringing an elderly man into a fight just to embarrass him. The atmosphere shifted as the crowd recognized the figure. Lu Sanbai, a legendary Qigong master. Inflating his ego amidst whispers of admiration, the old man demanded respect, while Yan ordered the boy to kneel and beg. But to Han Hao, the title of master smelled more like a con than authority. The provocation hit Lu's weak spot. The old man hated being underestimated and moved with explosive speed, far beyond anything Yan could manage. His first strike blurred in motion. Han Hao barely followed the rhythm of the master's hands, which seemed to draw symbols in the air before each hit. A sharp crack connected, twisting the boy's arm brutally and unnaturally. A second strike sent him to the ground, kneeling and exposed. The master smiled, thinking the fight was over, but Han Hao recovered in a leap, feeling the energy from his training finally stabilize his body. He began reading the flow of the battle. The old man's style was refined, but not invincible. Seeing Han Hao still standing, Lu Sanbai revealed his trump card. A no-contact attack capable of destroying internal organs without ever touching the skin. Han Hao's disbelief was short-lived. Suddenly, paralyzing agony ripped through his abdomen, locking his muscles and stealing his breath. The shock was real. The old man wasn't playing, and the hero realized the fatal mistake of underestimating a true master. While the spectators marveled at the teacher's genius, Han Hao knew the games were over. If he didn't unleash the chaos technique now, his organs would be reduced to jelly before the next move. Chaos boiled beneath his skin. Eyes closed, he ignored the world, diving into the trance of the chaos technique, seeking the root of his hidden power. Around him, Mr. Yan strutted arrogantly, spitting insults and claiming the reckoning had arrived. He believed the boy was frozen in fear, but the reality was a volcano ready to erupt. The instant the energy peaked, Han Hao struck. The movement was lightning fast. A touch to the center of Yan Bill's palm that felt light, but carried devastating force. The pain was so sharp the villain nearly passed out instantly. At the same moment, the system's interface lit up. Mission complete. 30 immortality points earned. The system vibrated with satisfaction, though it mocked how long the boy had taken. With a sadistic grin, Han Hao grabbed the opponent's arm, asking if the owner still cared to keep it. Desperation overtook the blonde, who screamed to avoid mutilation. In seconds, the power hierarchy was completely inverted. Meanwhile, Xiao Yang hurried down the stairs, fearing the chaos would taint his karaoke's reputation. He scolded the staff for not announcing the arrival of his little brother, but froze when he saw the scene. Recognizing the Qigong master, he panicked, alerting Han Hao to the lethal threat and pointing to a getaway car already staged outside. But the warning came too late. The car wasn't needed. Han Hao dropped the half-conscious master to the floor, giving his friend a look of mock innocence. He tried to conceal the true extent of his strength, but the trail of destruction and knocked-out enemies told a different story. Xiao Yang had no words, only admiration for the hero's imposing presence. The victory vibe was short-lived, however. Xiao Yang's expression darkened as he revealed the real problem. Something far more sinister had appeared on the horizon. The tension in Xiao Yang's voice was tangible, loaded with desperation he could no longer contain. He confessed that his father had forbidden him from speaking on the matter, but after witnessing Han Hao's overwhelming power, he decided the boy was the only one capable of preventing a tragedy. Patriarch Xiao's days were numbered if no one intervened. An enemy from the past, the relentless Cheng Ye, had returned from the ashes to claim blood. Years ago, Cheng Ye had been humiliated and banished from the city, but exile had transformed him into something far worse. Now he led an elite assassin syndicate and had placed Xiao Yang's father at the top of his hit list. The terror was so intense that old Xiao wasted away, neither eating nor sleeping, awaiting the final strike. In that web of espionage, they discovered that even Yan Tianxing was involved in the conspiracy. Han Hao processed the information with sharp focus. Far from backing down, he felt honored by the trust and accepted the mission without hesitation. Xiao Yang tried to mask his insecurity, questioning if one man, even a monster like his friend, could face an entire squad of death professionals. With a playful kick to break the tension, Han Hao commanded, "Cut the crap and show me the way." The car cut through the night, the city slipping away under a blanket of darkness. The destination, the isolated Zhao family mansion, where Han Hao would spend the night planning the counterattack. Outwardly confident, his mind was elsewhere, on Moya. She was home alone, a sitting target for any retaliatory strike. She had just stepped out of the shower when her phone buzzed. On the other end, Han Hao's voice carried over the hum of the engine. He warned he wouldn't be returning for sleep, and anticipating danger, had already called Mr. Li to surround the house with armed security. Xiao Yang, ever curious, couldn't resist teasing, asking if the two were now sharing a roof. Han Hao cut the joke short, keeping his focus where it mattered, the war that would erupt at dawn. The Xiao family mansion loomed like a fortress in the dark. Its scale and luxury spoke volumes about the family's power, but inside the air felt heavy, almost funerary. Zhao Jiang rushed forward to introduce the savior, but the patriarch, eyes cold and face hard, barely concealed his skepticism. He thanked Han Hao but couldn't resist a sharp truth. This war might be too heavy for a boy. Han Hao didn't respond. Calm to the point of irritation, he simply asked if he could stay the night. Mr. Zhao hesitated, warning that his presence would draw a target to their doorstep, but the boy insisted that the father would still be surprised. To the old man, Han Hao was nothing more than a child playing hero. As he walked the courtyard, Han Hao's eyes scanned the activity. Uniformed guards patrolling every corner, heavy gear at the ready, state-of-the-art cameras monitoring the entrances. Zhao Jiang tried to convince himself that technology alone would keep the enemy at bay, but his father knew elite assassins didn't fear motion sensors. Han Hao surveyed the grounds and saw the obvious. the mansion was riddled with blind spots. The so-called security was a sieve for professionals. The system pinged in his mind, offering options: the shadow catcher stance or the capture scroll. The hero wanted a permanent technique, but the price was steep: 100 immortality points, more than he had. The argument with the AI grew tense. It had no patience for frustration, dumping the responsibility squarely on him. Fuming, Han Hao chose the one-time use capture scroll. He stared at the golden slip of paper with bitter regret, lamenting the sacrifice of his hard-earned 30 points. Following the instructions, he placed it on the ground. A faint mystical glow emanated from the floor, sealing the mansion's fate. The invisible trap was set. Now, only one question remained: which shadow would fall into it first? Han Hao's eyes gleamed with mystical fire as he activated absolute perception. In his mind, a three-dimensional map of the mansion unfolded. He was now a human radar, able to sense every vibration, every step around the property. Confident that his divine eye ensured total security, he allowed himself a brief, strategic rest. The alert hit his subconscious like a lightning bolt. Danger had arrived. Springing from bed, renewed energy coursing through him, Han Hao tracked the threat. 5 intruders were moving beneath the guards' noses. They weren't climbing walls. They were tunneling straight into the mansion, directly beneath the room where Patriarch Zhao Tiande sat. They were mere meters from their target. Eager to prove himself and silence the skeptics, Han Hao sprinted to the security room. He barged in with an urgent warning, ready for confrontation, but the scene frustrated him. The mansion's owner stared back with pure disdain. A heavy, awkward silence settled. No one understood why the kid had burst in. Han Hao scanned the room, puzzled. By his calculations, the floor should have already opened. He tapped into his mental radar again and discovered the ridiculous truth. The assassins had paused mid-tunnel for a smoke break. The Patriarch, impatient, questioned Han Hao's late intrusion. The boy tried to explain between awkward chuckles, while the Patriarch admitted he was only fighting sleep to avoid being caught off guard. Han Hao issued a final warning. The enemy was literally beneath their feet. Mr. Zhao, however, remained motionless, treating the revelation as the ramblings of an overactive child struggling through a night of vigilance. Little did he know, the floor under his chair was about to become a killing field. The Patriarch gestured to the technological arsenal surrounding him, confident that no one could cross his walls undetected. Han Hao's sharp gaze shattered the illusion. The cameras didn't cover the subsoil. He warned that the enemy would erupt from the ground any second. As if on cue, the security room floor trembled violently. The host's skepticism died the moment the floor exploded. Black-clad figures sprang from the shadows, blades drawn, eyes burning with hatred. They declared Lord Xiao's time over, vowing that their master's debt would be paid in blood. Han Hao watched with mild boredom. He expected elite professionals, but saw nothing more than noisy amateurs barging in. Things got personal when the intruders' leader, Cheng Ye, revealed himself. The feud wasn't just about power. It stemmed from an absurd old love triangle. Cheng Ye snarled that Xiao had stolen the woman of his life. The Patriarch shot back, calling him a perverted obsession who'd never accepted rejection. The villain lived in a fantasy where the woman was forced to marry, but reality crashed in the most absurd way. Xiao's phone rang. It was her. Han Hao saw the perfect chance to end the drama and encourage the husband to answer. Across the line, in New York, the woman's voice ignored the imminent gunfight. She was upset that her credit card limit had been maxed out, demanding another $2 million for more luxury shopping. In a mix of desperation and trance, Cheng Ye snatched the laptop, shouting her birth name, Niu Guixiang, begging her to remember the promises of the past. The answer hit like a bucket of ice water. Cold, dismissive, the woman said her name was Nancy now, didn't know any Cheng Ye, and that he must be mistaken. The click of the phone echoed through the silent room. The big bad, the leader of the assassins, froze in front of the screen, his heart shattered by the triviality of the woman he swore he loved, while Han Hao just watched the pathetic display of ego and illusion. With sharp sarcasm, Han Hao added salt to the wound. Reality was far more trivial than the tragic romance Cheng Ye had invented. The villain, in total denial, exploded in fury toward Xiao Tiande, accusing him of turning the woman into a brand-obsessed socialite. While the Patriarch wrestled with the painful truth, the assassin seized the opening. Deadly blades sliced through the air toward Xiao, but the expected impact never came. In a flash, Han Hao appeared between them, gripping a wooden board now pierced with knives. No one had seen the move. To the criminals, he was just a background extra. Irritated, Cheng Ye ordered the boy out of the way if he didn't want to become a corpse, but Han Hao just rolled his eyes. He complained about losing too much already because of this guy, grumbling about the 30 immortality points wasted. Confused, the villain concluded the boy was insane and commanded total extermination. The shuriken experts surrounded the duo. The air was thick with metal and death. Han Hao knew every breath counted, but he pushed his magic energy to the limit. With a violent repulsion, he reversed the trajectory of the weapons. What had been an attack became a massacre. The assassins were struck by their own blades, dropping one by one. Wounded and panicked, Cheng Ye ordered an immediate retreat, crawling toward the escape tunnel. Lord Shao tried to mobilize the guards to stop him, but Han Hao placed a hand on his shoulder, signaling calm. With an enigmatic look, he warned a quake was about to strike. The intruders dove into the underground tunnel, believing darkness would save them. But the real predator was already in motion. From the mansion's roof, Han Hao launched like a meteor. The impact of his descent was colossal. The moment his feet hit the ground above the tunnel, the earth cracked and exploded. The floor trembled in a massive shockwave, carving a perfect circular crater. The promised quake buried the fugitives' hopes under tons of rubble, proving there was no hole in the world where they could hide from the chaos' wrath. The mansion's patriarch watched, utterly shocked. Logic seemed ripped away before his eyes. Han Hao, however, surveyed the crater with a satisfied smile. He had no patience for one-on-one duels, so he solved the problem in a single move, turning the escape tunnel into a collective grave, burying the assassins under tons of stone and debris. Finally, Mr. Shao's mind clicked. He realized the hero wasn't a confused kid, but the only one who had noticed the underground invasion. At that moment, Xiao Jiang came running, still dizzy from the tremor shaking the estate. Stunned, he asked what natural phenomenon had just occurred, while Han Hao mocked the mansion's slow guards, who had only arrived to collect the remains. Despite the humiliation of their elite warriors, the mansion's owner bowed in gratitude. Exhausted and yawning, Han Hao declared his part done, leaving the cleanup to the landowners. The next morning, recognition came in the form of a rare gift. Mr. Xiao opened an ancient chest and revealed a fragment of a sacred tree, a lucky charm with hidden powers he preferred not to explain. Inside the boy's mind, the system went into ecstasy. The order was clear: take it now. It was a legendary item capable of multiplying training efficiency 100-fold. Even under Han Hao's skepticism, the system guaranteed its usefulness and, with its usual irony, erased any doubt. The conversation was interrupted as Xiao Jiang entered to take his friend back to the city, but in the blink of an eye, reality warped. Han Hao vanished from the sofa, reappearing in an absolute unknown void. The system, its tone sinister and challenging, explained the situation. The hero had been placed in total isolation. There was no physical escape, only evolution. To leave that dimension, he would have to master a new, high-level skill. The boy laughed at the audacity of his own digital consciousness, accepted the challenge, and sank into deep meditation, channeling every ounce of his inner energy to push the limits of his power. The useless piece of wood in the boy's hands sparks an instant fury. To him, it's nothing more than a broken toy, but the master's explanation hits like a bucket of cold water. The boy's soul is still soaked in the filth of the human world. Without spiritual purity, the relic won't react. The message is clear. The more you cling to ego, the weaker your magic becomes. The original plan to escape in 30 days has now turned into a desperate race against time. The hero has to surpass himself, or rot right there. The anger toward his mentor burns inside, but Han Hao channels it into training. 3 days pass in the blink of an eye inside that mysterious void. He ignores fatigue, focuses on the energy pulsating around him, and locks into the lotus position. The result shocks his system. The impossible happens. In just 72 hours, without the aid of the magical tree, he masters a new skill. The smile on his face isn't just victory, it's pure mockery at fate itself. The scene shifts to the luxurious isolation of Li Tan Hao's mansion. Sitting atop a hill and surrounded by dense woods, the property reeks of money and solitude. The reunion with old Li is cordial, but the mission is personal. Keep his girlfriend safe. Amidst thanks and talks of protection, a new name comes up. Xiao Shuang, the host's granddaughter. Han Hao's memory sparks instantly, bringing back the face of that arrogant girl who once made him wish he could disappear from her hostility. The hero climbs the stairs to fetch the women, getting lost in the mansion's endless doors and corridors. Without direction, he notices a slightly open door and decides to take the risk, hoping to find Moy and end the social visit quickly. The mistake is fatal. Pushing the door open, there's no sign of his friend, only the boss's granddaughter, caught in a moment of total vulnerability while changing. The silence in the room lasts just a second. Her face goes from shock to deep red, then to murderous rage. Without giving him time to explain or apologize, she turns the room into a battlefield. Objects fly like projectiles at the intruder. The situation escalates when her strength proves supernatural, bending metal with the force of her attacks. Manhwa realizes that if he doesn't run or defend himself now, this won't just be an embarrassing mess, it'll be his brutal final end. Panic takes over as the hero bolts down the hallway, only for fate to strike again. He collides head-on with his girlfriend. Surprised, she asks how he got there so fast and where he's been all these days. He tries to distract her with a weak smile and an improvised excuse about a last-minute trip, but Xiaoshuang's furious screams echo through the walls, shattering any attempt at normalcy. His girlfriend, shocked by the commotion from the room, demands to help her friend. With no way out, he mutters that whatever happens, it's not his fault. Crossing the threshold of the room, Manhwa freezes at the door. The trauma of the earlier encounter is still fresh, and he refuses to look inside, asking aloud if anyone is there. The silence that follows is unnerving. For an explosive girl like Lee's granddaughter, the lack of response is a definite warning. The mood shifts instantly from a funny misunderstanding to a life-or-death situation. He rushes in, finds the room empty, and sprints to the balcony, scanning the twilight shadows for any trace. Then, horror takes shape. Under the pale moonlight, a tall, dark silhouette emerges from the shadows of the estate. The intruder carries a motionless girl on his shoulder, hanging like a lifeless doll. The unmistakable shine of Lee's granddaughter's hair confirms the worst. She's been kidnapped. Without hesitation, Manhwa leaps from the balcony in a frantic pursuit, while his girlfriend watches from above, frozen with fear, silently praying he survives the confrontation. The chase is relentless. The hero pushes his muscles to the limit, closing the distance with commanding shouts, making it clear no one under his watch leaves alive. When he finally reaches the kidnapper, he demands the girl be released. To his surprise, the figure in the black cloak stops abruptly and stares him down. But the scene is strange. The villain is gasping, struggling for breath. Manhwa senses the weakness. The enemy is exhausted, and the real battle is about to begin. Manhwa moves in with a straightforward proposal. Hand over the girl and walk away unharmed. But the cloak-wearing figure isn't here for talks and refuses immediately. The hero smiles. He expected this. It's the perfect opportunity to test the overwhelming power he awakened in training. Fear flashes in the kidnapper's eyes as he sees Manhwa's arm engulfed in intense flames. With a strength that defies nature, Manhwa grabs a nearby tree trunk and rips it from the ground like a twig, holding the colossal weight with one hand effortlessly. The intruder recoils, realizing he's not facing an ordinary human, but a seeker of immortality. Manhwa confirms the suspicion with a smirk and unleashes the first devastating attack. The cloaked man barely dodges, huffing in anger when he realizes the boy isn't a Lee family member, but merely an ally of the old master. The villain vows to destroy any plan the boy is trying to protect, but Manhwa remains unshaken. He makes it clear he won't tolerate injustice while he's around. Tension explodes when the stranger decides the hero is just an obstacle to be removed. Defiant, Manhwa lifts the tree above his head and orders the enemy to come closer. He hurls the trunk with full force, but the opponent moves with supernatural agility, dodging without breaking stride. With silent disdain, the kidnapper retreats, carrying Lee's granddaughter deeper into the forest's darkness. But Manhwa refuses defeat. Even with the rough terrain and thick foliage slowing him down, he prepares a masterful move. The villain, sensing silence, wonders where the boy went until he looks up at the sky and panics. A giant rock plummets toward him under Manhwa's command. The impact would be fatal, but the kidnapper leaps at the last millisecond. As dust settles, Manhwa reappears, warning that the next rock will hit his skull if he doesn't stop. The thief turns, and the hatred in his eyes meets the young warrior's unshakable determination. The forest darkness is suddenly sliced by sinister magic. From the enemy's hands, a thick purple mist begins to coil, engulfing everything nearby. Manhwa freezes for a second, questioning if the vapor is lethal, but the fear of losing the kidnapper outweighs caution. Ignoring his survival instinct, he plunges into the heart of the smoke. Visibility drops to 0. Amid the shadows, he spots a figure and lands a brutal strike, only to realize he's been tricked. The villain used his cloak as bait, leaving Manhwa punching empty air. Rage overflows in Manhwa. He feels taunted by the enemy's hide-and-seek game. In a desperate attempt to clear his vision, he reaches for his X-ray amulet, but what he sees freezes him. Lee's granddaughter lying just a few steps away. He scoops her into his arms, but terror sets in as he looks at her face. Her eyes are open, but the spark is gone. She looks hollow, with a glassy stare, completely detached from reality. The dilemma is brutal. Fall back to save the girl, or keep chasing. But before he can decide, the hero feels the weight of a fatal mistake. His arms and legs stop responding. His body goes numb, like his nerves have been severed. The mist isn't just smoke, it's a biological trap. A deafening buzz floods his ears as tiny magical insects invade his system, paralyzing every muscle and leaving him completely at the mercy of his enemy. From the shadows, a grotesque figure emerges, a humanoid creature with strange markings across its face and a triumphant grin. It mocks Han Hao's arrogance, claiming the battle was over the moment he inhaled the insect cloud. Even paralyzed, the young warrior growls, demanding to know the reason for such cruelty. The creature's reply is cold and sharp. "Because I can." Without any mercy, the monster grabs the girl by her hair and drags her like a disposable object, while Han Hao watches helpless, trapped in his own body. The villain presses Han Hao's face with razor-sharp claws, revealing his sadistic plan. He intends to send the shredded body of the granddaughter to Li Tianhao. His goal is to destroy the old man psychologically, to make him taste the bitter edge of absolute despair. Between manic laughter, the kidnapper admits that the girl's slow torture is the only cure for the hatred consuming his soul. This is a blood revenge. Lord Li was responsible for the death of Xuan Hong, the villain's older brother, and the only true master of insect magic in the family. Memories flood the scene, his brother always encouraging him to find his own path, a safe harbor in a world of crushing expectations. With Xuan Hong gone, the young man's world collapsed, and blind rage filled the void left by the loss. With nothing to lose and driven by grief, the cloak-wearing man sought the forbidden lair of the Queen of Insects. Fear of death didn't exist for him. The end was just a reunion with his brother. The process was a visual nightmare. Thousands of insects biting and devouring his flesh, burrowing into his open wound so he could control the hive from the inside out. He submitted to the darkest, long-forgotten rituals of his lineage, transforming into something no longer human. The result is a worm-covered abomination, yet with devastating power. He survived excruciating torment to become the master of the fiercest poisonous enchantments. To him, Han Hao is nothing more than an insignificant insect, already condemned by sensory shutdown. The hero's agony begins. The poison attacks systematically. First, touch and taste vanish, then sight and smell. The world collapses as hearing fails, plunging Han Hao into absolute isolation. In panic, he calls for the system, begging for a response, but receives only crushing silence. The void spreads like an endless abyss, dragging the young man's consciousness into total darkness, where even the loudest scream cannot be heard. The villain watches Li's granddaughter like an inanimate object, without a trace of empathy. His deformed lips curl into a sickening smile, savoring his victory. Meanwhile, deep in the darkness of paralysis, Han Hao finally hears a call. A violent flash tears through the void, bringing the system's voice back. Relief hits so hard it nearly knocks him over. The hope of survival finally ignites. The system acts like a sarcastic but loyal guide, promising to stay by the hero's side until the end. The instructions are precise. Han Hao must force his energy circulation to the limit and release a surge of chaotic power. Outside, the kidnapper resumes dragging the girl through the filthy forest. Suddenly, he freezes. A strange, irresistible smell fills the air. Burnt flesh, with an exotic note that forces him to stop. Turning back, the villain finds Han Hao standing tall. The hero wears a smirk heavy with mockery, asking if the opponent is enjoying the smell of grilled insects. Shock crosses the enemy's face. No one should be able to neutralize parasites trained to destroy the nervous system. Before he can react, a stone hurled with superhuman force smashes against a nearby tree trunk, splintering the wood. The kidnapper points a long, sharp claw at the boy, growling that though he planned to leave him alive, the boy's audacity has sealed his death sentence. Han Hao pretends to cry dramatically, only to burst into laughter seconds later. He says he's heard empty threats too many times to be impressed, and makes a come-at-me gesture with his finger, daring the monster to show its true power. The response is instant, but not as expected. In the blink of an eye, the cloak-wearing man vanishes, disappearing among the trees like a ghost. The hero doesn't waste a second. He won't let the kidnapper escape with the prize. Without hesitation, he activates the X-ray vision amulet, turning the forest into a transparent map. With sharpened senses and the rescue of the girl burning in his mind, he launches into the final pursuit. The horizon reveals what normal eyes can't see. Through the amulet, the endless foliage gives way to a massive cabin, lost in the heart of shadows. Once a thriving, lively home, the hideout now stands as a desolate wooden skeleton, perfect for the kidnapper's plans. Han Hao doesn't hesitate. He ignores the main path and executes a powerful leap straight onto the second-floor balcony. The plan is simple: immediate invasion, total shock, securing the advantage. The system issues caution alerts, but the hero is too focused to back down. He smashes the door open with a crash, finding the villain at the center of the room. The shock on the enemy's face is priceless. Stunned, the kidnapper retreats, trying to understand how the boy found such an isolated place. Han Hao just smiles, rolls up his sleeves, and warns that the fun is over. There's nowhere left to run. He's ready to unleash his full potential and end this hunt right here. But overconfidence comes at a price. Before the hero can strike, the villain fires a gray, viscous substance, like a macabre spiderweb. Han Hao tries to dodge, but the attack is too fast. The moment the fiber touches him, regret hits instantly. The system was right. The venom in the web is devastating, attacking the nervous system in seconds, forcing the young man to drop to his knees, his body betraying his commands once again. The villain savors the moment. With a macabre smile on his mutilated lips, he mocks the hero's naivety, revealing that the cabin was actually a meticulously prepared trap. The gift, meant for old Li, now has a new recipient. With a mental command, the kidnapper releases the terrarium. An endless horde of hungry insects erupts from the gaps, covering Han Hao's body and sinking fangs into every exposed inch of skin. The master of insects grabs the boy by the neck, lifting him off the ground with contempt. He questions how someone seeking immortality can be so reckless, failing the most basic rule of controlling the mind. Through clenched teeth, suffocated by pressure and bites, Han Hao manages only a final growl ordering him to release. The villain laughs, certain of victory, but in fractions of a second, an impossible glow starts emanating from the boy's body. The hero is about to achieve what logic said was unreachable. The villain stares at Han Hao in pure astonishment. He can't comprehend how the boy, his body saturated with venom and advanced necrosis, can still hold his hand firmly on the shoulder. To the monster, the young man's endurance defies logic. He should be dead, but Han Hao's stubbornness burns stronger than the toxin. The kidnapper screams in fury that the greatest mistake of youth is believing in your own immortality too soon, guaranteeing that failure is now inevitable. But in a heartbeat, the mood shifts. An authoritative voice echoes through the cabin, calling for the boy. Even with his senses shredded, Han Hao recognizes it: Lord Li. Moog managed to bring reinforcements in time. Panic hits the master of insects. He didn't expect to be cornered so soon, and his perfect revenge plan starts to crumble. He glances at Li's granddaughter, realizing there's no way to escape while carrying her, but his twisted grin returns with a desperate idea. If he can't take her, he'll leave an eternal mark. With a snap of his fingers and a surgical motion, he slices his own wrist. A black, magic-infused thread of blood is forced directly into the girl's mouth. Han Hao watches the horror in slow motion, pleading for the villain to stop, shouting that she's innocent and doesn't deserve to be the vessel for this curse. Blood drips from her chin, and the hero's vision begins to darken. He feels life slipping away, the cold touch of death approaching, until the system flares violently before his eyes, issuing a final warning. While the interface is active, death has no permission to claim him. Suspended in the void of the system, Han Hao faces the projection of his mentor. His physical body is in critical condition, on the brink of total collapse, but his mind floats in a space where time doesn't exist. The system makes a tempting and cruel offer: full healing and immediate salvation, if only he abandons everything and accepts becoming an ordinary person. Memories of a golden childhood flood his vision. He sees himself jumping walls to grab the juiciest plums no one else could reach. Back then, Han Hao was the center of attention, the prodigy loved by teachers, admired by friends. He truly believed he was born for greatness, that he had a spark no one else possessed. The dream of being a comic book hero and saving the world was his only compass. But the scene shifts to the bitter taste of his first failure. The hero relives the day he didn't reach the top of the podium for the first time. The consolation prize in his hands felt heavier than a ton, and the certificate seemed to mock his mediocrity. Under the blazing sun of a typical summer day, reality hit. He was just another face in the crowd. The image of him eating watermelon, accepting his ordinary humanity, echoes as a reminder that a normal life isn't a punishment. It's just a fact. Back in the cold reality of the system, the mentor waits for his response. The choice is clear: the safety of a normal life or the uncertain survival of a warrior. Han Hao hesitates, but the flame of ambition speaks louder. He rejects the offer to be normal. For him, the need to be as strong as the very element of air, to feel special, is what keeps him alive. The mentor, shocked at such stubbornness in the face of death, insists he reconsider, but the young man's gaze makes it clear. He'd rather die trying the impossible than live in the anonymity of mediocrity. Han Hao's answer is sharp. He knows the abyss between the top of the podium and a consolation prize all too well. In the past, fate made the choices for him, but now the game has changed. He refuses to be just another face in the crowd after tasting true power. With a cunning look, the boy challenges the system, demanding the reveal of the second alternative. He knows if the only exit were mediocrity or the grave, the mentor wouldn't have started this conversation at all. The system stops playing games. The verdict is brutal. The insect venom didn't destroy him internally only because the chaos technique acted as a makeshift dam. The only way to survive is to force his energy circulation to purge the toxin, a process of unimaginable pain, demanding mental strength far beyond anything Han Hao has ever shown. The mentor, taking ever-shifting forms that defy logic, watches the boy's reaction with almost icy seriousness. He questions whether the young man is really willing to risk his life just to maintain his connection with the system. The honesty hits the hero. Han Hao admits his fear, but reveals his twisted logic. He refuses to believe his story should end in something so mundane. For him, it's better to face agony than live cowardly. In a moment of introspection, he realizes he may never have been as ordinary as childhood defeats made him believe. His stubbornness itself proves he carries something different in his veins. The system doesn't hold back, delivering a reality check. It was precisely this arrogance and disregard for the enemy that brought him to his knees. Han Hao swallows his pride and admits the error, but he doesn't back down. If the system he carries is the strongest that exists, he will accept nothing less than becoming the most powerful seeker of immortality the world has ever seen. The stakes are set. Either he emerges as a legend, or he is lost in the void chasing the impossible. The system smiles at Han Hao's declaration of war. With a snap of his fingers, reality fractures, and the true baptism by fire begins. Hundreds of electric surges rip through the boy's body, turning the numbness of the venom into burning agony. The scream escaping his throat is raw, echoing through the void. He struggles to control his own breath, forcing his ki to circulate through the chaos, so he isn't reduced to ashes. Even with trembling arms under the shock, a pale light begins to glow between his palms. Han Hao closes his eyes, ignoring the pain to focus solely on the flow of energy sustaining his life. It's at that moment the golden root hidden within him awakens. It envelops him in an impenetrable cocoon of light, fighting the toxicity millimeter by millimeter. The interface flashes a final notification: test complete. The system now belongs to him forever. The awakening is brutal. Han Hao opens his eyes in a strange bed, his body drenched in sweat and consumed by fever. Beside him, Moga sleeps deeply, exhausted from staying awake all night. The hero watches her for a moment, grateful for her silent loyalty, until the door opens. Mr. Li Tianhao enters, his face marked by relief at seeing the boy conscious. Moge jumps up, startled, and rushes to check that he really returned from the brink. The boy tries to reassure them with a weak smile, insisting that the worst is over, but the feeling of victory is short-lived. When they visit Xiao Shuang's room, the scene is devastating. The girl remains in a vegetative state, and the doctors are at a loss in the face of a condition science can't explain. Han Hao feels the weight of failure crushing his chest. He whispers that this tragedy is the result of his own arrogance and delay in acting. However, old Li intervenes firmly, refusing to let the young man carry the burden alone. For the grandfather, the fault lies in his own failure to protect the family, not with the boy who risked his life to try to save her. The system flares before Han Hao's eyes, revealing the cruel truth behind Xiaoxuan's pale condition. Thanks to the last special vision amulet, he discovers that the girl is trapped by a twisted enchantment. It's a dark bond. Her life is tied to the casters. If the villain dies, or the connection is brutally severed, the poison activates and Xiaoxuan dies instantly. Anger boils in the hero's blood. His instinct is to find the perpetrator and crush that hateful face with his fists. But strategy is needed. The only option is a suspension pill, capable of pausing the cursed link for 24 hours, giving him the time to hunt the villain without killing the girl. Time is running out. The hero warns that the amulet's effect is limited and precise. Any target switch now would break the protective spell. There's no time for small talk. Li Tianhao, his face set in stone, orders immediate departure while leaving Moog responsible for his granddaughter's safety. The farewell is brief, loaded with tension and pleas to be careful. As they move through the sterile hospital corridors under cold lights, the past begins to surface. Hanhao asks the old man about the origin of this bloody revenge and the source of such deep-seated hatred. The story is heavy. Years ago, Li's power drew envy and shadows. Enemies hired Xuan Hong, a master of dark arts who, though weak in direct combat, specialized in invisible curses. Before Li could react, Xiaoxuan's parents had already been consumed by poison. The revenge came fast. The old man hunted down the sorcerer and executed him with a single fatal strike. It was an act of mercy for a hired killer, but the cost was high. Li himself was infected by the corruption of that magic, surviving only by mastering forbidden immortality techniques. Now, the ghost of that past has returned to claim a debt the old man thought he had already paid in blood.